Morning.
Morning. Hi, Councillor Sabi George. Hi, Councillor Flynn.
Good morning, Kenzie. Good morning, Anissa.
See, we've got Law.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and
Good
Council.
morning. Actually, I don't know, Mr. Council, like, what's the?
Henry is fine.
Well, thank you for, but yeah, it occurs to me, I don't know what the formal title for a corporation council is.
Good morning, Henry.
Councillor Flynn, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Henry. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Hope everyone else is good. Sorry, I had to switch my profile there. I'm sure I'm logged in the right way.
Good morning, Councillor.
Morning. Good to see everybody.
Good morning, Henry. Good morning, neighbor.
Oh,
I can
Councillor
see
Bridge,
my
how
house.
are you?
I
Good
can
to
see
see
your house from my house.
There we go.
Okay, I'm just gonna let the council know we're about to get going. And is Chantal on? Since Law's in first, I'll probably start with Law. Unless we've got everyone else is stuck outside, so it's not fair. All right, one second. I'm just gonna make sure.
Myself and Henry go to the same barber.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Hey, Councillor Bach, I just want to let you know I'm here, okay? It's Councillor Mejia.
Hi, Councillor Mejia. Yeah, okay, we've got a bunch of people in the waiting room, so let's get everybody in and then figure this out. All right. Just making sure we've got everybody in. Okay. And we'll be going in the order that's listed on the screen here. So Law, and then Arts and Culture, and then Tourism. With apologies to Kate and team. All right. Sorry, still got folks trickling in here. Okay. Carrie or Candace, are we ready? I see we're live on YouTube.
Cool, you are, Madam Chair.
Great, excellent. All right, we got lots to get through, so I think we should get going. I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the Chair of the Ways and Means Committee. This public hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8 RCN Channel 82, and Files Channel 964. It's part of the City Council's budget review process, which is encompassing about 35 public hearings and working sessions throughout the months of April, May, and June. We're really encouraging residents to get involved in the process by testifying throughout the process. So you can do that in a number of ways. You can see the whole schedule of department hearings if you go to boston.gov/council-budget. That's boston.gov/council-budget. And at any of those department hearings, you can give testimony. You can sign up through that website. You can also find it at boston.gov/budget-testify. And then, and if you want to reach us by email, send an email to ccc.wm. That's M as in mother. So to ccc.wm@boston.gov. And we'll help you find the links. So you can come in, join us in one of these Zooms and actually testify in person that way, or virtually in person. You can submit a video, which we will, if you upload that for us 48 hours in advance, we'll actually attach it to the video of a hearing. Or you can send us an email at that address, ccc.wm@boston.gov, with written testimony, and that'll get entered into the record. So we're definitely looking for your testimony. Thankful to all who joined us last night for a public testimony hearing. We want to hear from you. These are your dollars, both city dollars and the federal funding that we're getting. And we want your voice in the process. Today's hearing is on dockets 0524 to 0526, orders for the FY22 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, for the school department, and for other post-employment benefits. Docket 0527 to 0528, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations, and docket 0529 to 0531, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Those are our standard budget dockets. And then in addition, this hearing is about dockets 0540 to 0543, which are orders authorizing limits for revolving funds for FY22 for law, arts and culture, and tourism. And just so folks watching at home know, revolving funds are funds that are established for city departments for very particular purposes, where the city department takes in funds from some operation and then it spends those funds on a related thing to that operation. And so they're not taxpayer dollars, they're revolving, right? So the money's coming in and it's going out on the same kind of linked purpose. But the city council's oversight over them is to each year set the limit, the maximum amount that fund can hold, which is just a way for us to make sure that those funds are being used in the way that they're designed to be used. And that the money really is revolving. It's not building up. It's not being spent on sort of other purposes. And so throughout this budget process, you will hear us talk about revolving funds as something that some departments have. And the three departments who are before us today, law, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and the Mayor's Office of Tourism, Sports, and Entertainment, each have revolving funds in their care. I'm joined here today by my colleagues, Councillor Ed Flynn of District 2, Councillor Anissa Sabi-George at large, Councillor Liz Braden, District 9, Councillor Julia Mejia at large, Councillor Michael Flaherty at large, and Councillor Andrea Campbell, District 4. With apologies to councillors, I think we're going to continue what we've been doing, which is to jump straight into hearing from the departments so that we can maximize councillor time for questions rather than just general statements. So we will begin with the law department. We're joined today, I'll introduce each department as we're going along. So we're joined today by Henry Luthen, who's our corporation counsel for the city, who I believe is joined on his team by Susan Weiss, the first assistant corporation counsel, Adam Cedarbaum, the general counsel, and Lena Kate Ahern, the assistant corporation counsel. Without further ado, Henry, over to you.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. And thank you very much, councilors, for hearing us today. I thought, first of all, I would just go over the structure of the department, then some of the challenges we're facing, and some of the budget items that have changed in this year's budget. As to structure, Susan Wisey is the first assistant for litigation. Her shop handles, there's about 10 attorneys there and we're fully staffed. Her shop handles all litigation against the city. Adam Cedarbaum's department, government services. The lawyers there, again, when we're fully staffed, it should be 10 lawyers, serve as general counsel to the various city departments, and will answer questions, guide departments on regulations, contracts, answer policy questions. Lena K. DeHern is head of our claims and affirmative recovery section. And she will answer all questions about the revolving fund. This basically comes under her. We also have constituent parts of the department in other city agencies. For example, Boston Public Schools, a legal advisor, the Boston Police Department legal advisor, Inspectional Services legal advisor, Public Facilities legal advisor, and we have a special ACC at the library who is not on our budget, but who is a former member of our staff who has ACC authority over there. We also have an ACC in Treasury, and we have general oversight of the workers' compensation section. We're down right now 19 positions, 16 attorneys, 2 paralegals, and 1 administrative support position. We're trying to get these filled. In fact, 1 attorney will be coming on board on June 1st. We have been able to interview and attract people. Unfortunately, we tend to lose people. We lost 3 to labor relations, 1 to schools labor relations this past year, 2 to labor relations in City Hall. Labor relations is not part of us, but you can see how attorneys, as they progress, if they see a career path, they may want to specialize. And this is a golden opportunity for them. And we certainly do not discourage anyone who wants to leave the department to further their career. In terms of changes to the budget, where $125,000 has been reallocated from our department to the new Office of Police Accountability and Training Department that Stephanie Everett will head. Stephanie is coming on board Monday. Right now, she is under contract with us as special counsel so that she can view various confidential documents, and the documents will not lose the attorney-client privilege. It'll be a pleasure to be able to work with her. She will have a shop that I suspect we will be working with for the next year and in years to come. A lot of challenges we're facing, and we certainly want to support the administration, which we always do. And we want to continue to provide the best legal services we can to the various departments, the mayor, and the city agencies. So with that, I will open it for questions or anything else you, Madam Chair, would like to see addressed.
Great. Thank you so much, Henry. And I'll just say to counselors, I think we'll run through questions for law right now so that we can let them go rather than waiting for all 3 departments. But I would just ask counselors to, when we have 3 departments like this, to, really focus in on the questions you want answered, and that we don't do excess long rounds, because then we'll keep our other departments waiting. I guess my first question, Henry, is maybe if you could just have, because this is the hearing on the revolving fund, it would be good to have a little bit of a report just on that, kind of for the purposes of the record.
Absolutely. And I'd ask Lena K. DeHern, our Assistant Corporation Counsel in charge of, who has general jurisdiction over the revolving funds, to address that.
Hi, sure. So I am the director of the claims division within the law department, as Henry said. And part of the work that we do there is to bring claims against individuals and insurance companies to recover compensation for property damages that have been caused to city property, often vehicles, as well as buildings, fences, trees, things like that. And the revolving fund is where that money is deposited when we receive checks from entities or individuals we've filed claims against. And that can come in through a pre-litigation claim, or if it goes into litigation and it's settled or we obtain a judgment in the fund. And departments can then apply to that fund to use the funds available there instead of having to use their own budgets for that year to make repairs to property. It doesn't need to be exactly the same as if they had a claim before that they assisted with, but it's to be sort of in the general keeping of the types of claims that we're bringing. So for example, if the fire department needs to make repairs to its trucks or buy a new truck, they might be able to take advantage of that fund. They would apply through our office as well as the budget office to get approval, make sure it's the right sort of expenditure. And my understanding is that when a department provides documents and assists us in pursuing the claim, the budget office keeps track of that amount of money that we're able to bring in from that claim. And then that department is sort of allocated for 2 years the amount of money they have brought in. After 2 years, the money just becomes available to any department to apply for. So that department sort of has priority to that money for a period of time after it's brought in. But if they don't take advantage of it within 2 years, it then becomes sort of a more general fund for departments to apply for.
Great. And can you speak to any sort of like, do we find that it's fairly consistent year to year, or have there been trends recently in its utilization?
It does go up and down a bit. I know this past year we had a few large events where the individuals responsible were somewhat judgment proof, meaning there was no insurance that applied. So that means, we can do what we can to try to obtain recovery, but there, if somebody doesn't have insurance or funds available, there really isn't any money to be had. For example, if it's a criminal act that causes someone to crash into a wall of the Boston Common, insurance might not cover in that situation. So I believe we had a few incidents like that this past year, and our recovery may be a bit down for that reason, as well as, COVID sort of slowing down the ability for us to get records from departments to prove these damages. So I think there's some fluctuation, but not a lot.
Great. And then Henry, I just wanted to ask you, obviously 16 positions, 16 attorneys down is like pretty dramatic for the ability of the department to do the work that we count on it to do. While I take the point about people moving on in their careers, it feels to me like that suggests that we maybe don't pay competitive salaries or are otherwise, limited in our ability to compete. And so I wonder what strategically we're doing about that.
Well, Counselor, if I may, I think you hit it on the head. People leave us for places like Massport, the city of Cambridge, the city of Somerville. And I do want to say that OHR is seeking to address that issue. We hope that this will help us out in retaining people. It's frustrating when people, when lawyers get their feet wet, get honed in their craft, hone their craft. We're like the 8th or 9th year of law school, and they graduate. And to a large extent, that's natural, but we would like to, keep them for a few more years. Yeah. Thank you very much for bringing that point up.
And so when you say OHR is doing a review, is there an end point for that? First of all, in a kind of like immediate sense, I would think at the point at which you're down 16 positions, frankly, it would be better to be at like, okay, fine, we're going to list 10 positions, but they're all going to have more money attached so we can actually fill them than to have sort of, and I'm not suggesting that you want to downsize. I know you want every position, but I'm just saying, like, if we have long-term vacancies and they're all too low to attract talent, like, it just seems like there's a need for that OHR review to happen fairly speedily. So do you have a sense of what the timing on that is?
Yeah, I think they're addressing it. I can't give you a date, but they're seeking to address that expeditiously.
Okay. I just think it's something we should further follow up on because, the law department, we both rely on, it's sort of like the, meter maid conversation in normal times, right? The kind of like, you guys, you protect us from having to pay large judgments as a city, you pursue opportunities for us to recover funding. And then also on a whole bunch of non-financial fronts, obviously, there's been considerable press attention to a recent lawsuit concerning the exam school's admission there. I think you're currently engaged in defending us on a First Amendment front, the council. These are like pretty important policy things in addition to the financial things that we don't want to go unrepresented on.
And Madam Chairman, I want to thank you for bringing up the exam school litigation. This had to be done on a dime. We have wonderful outside counsel, Kay Hodge, who has represented us in many matters, took this up, and working with Kathy Lazard, our legal advisor at Boston Public Schools, did a marvelous job with the briefs and made quick turnarounds. I can't say enough about not only the people in-house, but those we have on contract as well. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Next up, Councillor Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Block. Thank you, Chair Block. Thank you to the Corporation Council team that's here for your outstanding work, and just want to acknowledge Henry and his long time dedication to the residents of Boston. An exceptional attorney and a man with exceptional integrity. So just want to say thank you, Henry, for being such a dedicated city employee for all these years. I just wanted to follow up, Henry, on the posts, the positions that are still open. Do the positions that are still open, is a reason that they might be open is that the start of the initial salary, the salary chart might be a little too low, or as you know, and your attorneys know, coming out of law school, they probably have huge tuition bills and they need to pay their tuition bills off. But is the salary chart, does that need to be adjusted? And what are some of the issues relating to the salary, Henry?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councilor. First for your kind words, but also for bringing this up. I think that if appropriate adjustments are made, it would make our life a lot easier. Having said that, in the environment we're in, and surprisingly, I think, to me anyway, after the pandemic, but there's a lot of competition for lawyers out there. So we're fighting. By the way, the people we interview are very, very good. And we've been fortunate to be able to hire a number of people this past year. And, including a couple of stellar attorneys who we have brought on here at City Hall and also in some of the other agencies that we handle. But I think that there will be a serious look at compensation, and but I thank you for your support on that, and Madam Chairman as well.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you to your team. And that's something going forward. I hope I can work closely with Councilor Block and the Mayor's Office and the Ways and Means Committee on making sure that the Corporation Council staff has the necessary resources and funding so we can attract the exceptional attorneys that you have there. So want to say thank you to your team, Henry. They work hard for the residents of the city. They're very responsive, and they take their job very seriously and are a great credit to the residents of the city of Boston. Thank you, Henry, and the Corporation Council team.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Block.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Counselor Sabi George, and then it's Braden, Mejia, Flaherty, Campbell, Edwards, and we were joined by Counselor Edwards a while ago. Counselor Sabi George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to Henry and your team for being with us this morning. Just a brief question for all of you. I'm curious, some of this conversation this morning around the lack of staff and the challenges in hiring and having a full team on board. What has that created in terms of delays around cases that you are focused on, the work that you are focused on? And, is there an opportunity in the interim to contract out with additional legal services to maybe get through some of the cases that are outstanding? And what are some of the longer standing cases that we haven't been able to process or proceed with because of the lack of resources and people?
That's a very good question. It's we've really been attentive to, and Susan can speak to this as well as Adam, very attentive to keeping up with litigation. There are a couple of things that we have been able to put on the back burner, but which I, for one, would have liked to have addressed. But I know in terms of litigation, we're very prompt. I don't think anything has fallen behind. And again, for a lot of the specialty work, we do have outside counsel. Did you want to add anything, Susan?
No, I think as far as litigation goes, we're in fairly good shape. There is no back burning for litigation. It's run by the courts. We have to do what they, direct us to do on their time schedule. We work very hard. We work at nights, we work on weekends, and we've gotten it done. For instance, this exam school case, we were putting those briefs together over the weekends. I mean, we were, while Kay Hodge was the drafter, Kathy Lizotte and I were reviewing constantly. So nothing really falls between the cracks in litigation. We're moving forward. We use outside counsel on occasion when there's a conflict of interest. If you have multiple defendants, and sometimes they like to point the finger at each other, we might need outside counsel for that. And or if there's a particular area of expertise that we may need on occasion. But so far in litigation, we're doing okay for the moment. For some of it too, with the pandemic a year ago, we had a period of time for about 4 months when everything really slowed down. And then it ramped up again in the summer when everybody realized this was not going to change. The courts did everything online. The courts came back into the system, and all of a sudden we were doing, everything but a trial on Zoom hearings with, from the SJC, the appeals court, the federal district court, our summary judgment motions, all our dispositive motions, discovery motions, everything's just started pushing forward again really fast. But so far, like I said, we've done a really decent job of keeping up. And I have a fairly good team. As Henry said, I'd love to keep them for longer than a couple of years, but due to the salary constraints and the residency requirement, it's difficult.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Henry. And just, want to echo what Councillor Flynn and Councillor Brock have both said around supporting the efforts to, make sure that we're appropriately compensating attorneys and that we're able to get highly skilled and highly trained attorneys to do this work on behalf of the city of Boston, both as a municipality and its people. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it for me with this
Thank
group.
you.
Great. Thanks so much, Counselor Sabi George. Next up is Counselor Braden, then Counselor Mejia. Counselor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks also to all the team in the law department for the great work they're doing. I share my colleagues' concerns about the staff situation, and I don't want to repeat everything they've already said. I just wonder in terms of incentivizing, further longer tenure in your department. Are there career development pathways or other ways to incentivize your attorneys to stay longer?
If there are, I haven't found them yet.
It's a good, well-kept secret.
Indeed it is. But it is something, I think the fact that we have established legal advisor positions in other departments that we had not had them before would lead people to stay longer, so that when there is an eventual vacancy in a legal advisor position, then people would have the opportunity then to move into another management position, which perhaps wasn't there before. I think that has helped.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, I think if you're down 16 attorneys, you know, in terms of just the work rate, other people have to step it up and do extra duty in a way.
Yes.
I think it can be a war of attrition over time, and you don't want to burn out your staff and lose people because they get so burnt out that they can't do it anymore. So again, I think this is a really urgent issue, and I support my colleagues in calling for any assistance that we can give to support you hiring more folks to take on this incredible workload that you carry.
Thank you, Councillor Braden.
Thank you. Madam Chair, many of my questions have already been asked, so I will yield my time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. No, I appreciate it, Councillor Braden. We do have our other two departments, so brevity is especially appreciated today. All right, Councillor Mejia, and then it will be Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Mejia.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Henry, and to your team for all your hard work. It's greatly appreciated. I just have a few questions. I'm curious about the diversity makeup of the staff of your lawyers. If you could just kind of walk us through kind of what that breakdown looks like.
Yes, surely. Thank you. We have, in terms of attorneys, one African-American attorney, two Asian-American attorneys, one Asian-American paralegal. And forgive me.
Yeah, don't forget Erica.
That's true. I apologize. Let me get the list so that I have them. Okay. Here we go. 6 Black females in the department, 1 Hispanic male, 2 Asian females, 1 Asian male, 17 white females, 22 white males. For the top 10 earners in the department, 5 white females, 1 Asian female, 4 white males. And I have to say, thinking back, we have a diverse department in the sense that my goodness, I clicked the wrong button. We have a diverse department in the sense that a lot of the people who leave have been members of minority groups who see opportunities. 1 Palestinian American left a couple of years ago. He's fortunately, we've been able to keep him on as counsel in the Quincy Bridge case, and he's also chair of the lobbying commission. African American female left us to go to labor relations this summer. So we seem to be a pass-through for a lot of people. You know, and this is another reason that I think it's important to retain. If we retain people, we then build up.
Thank you for that, Henry. And I think that there is really an opportunity in terms of how we recruit and retain talents of color. So maybe that's something that we can just put a pin on and figure out what that would look like. And then I'm just curious, following this thread in terms of just representation and diversity, I'm also curious about, you have one Hispanic person working, and we have a large Latino population,
Yes.
and I'm just curious about what that engagement looks like. And then I just have two very specific questions about certain situations. So if you want to answer that, then I have two specific questions.
Sure. I really can't. They do everything that everybody does the same thing. So I don't, maybe I'm not
Understanding.
hearing your question.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about when you have cases that involved people who English may be limited. I'm just curious about what your staff capacity looks like in terms of being able to support these folks.
Well, we represent the city. And if there is a need for translation services, we obtain those. But since we represent the city, we really don't interact with third-party clients.
Thank you for that. So I have two questions specifically. One is in regards to special education in Boston Public Schools. And I'm just, because I hear from a lot of parents who have had to literally seek counsel to advocate fiercely for their children. And I'm just curious, how much money are we spending on defending those cases?
I would have to get that for you. That would be, in retrospect, I should have had Kathy Lazat here, who's the legal advisor to Boston Public Schools. She's got two very dedicated attorneys who specialize in special ed work. So let me get that information for you, maybe offline. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. And then my last question is in regards to the Boston Police Department. And I'm curious in terms of representation in that space. I've gotten some emails around, this is more from a labor perspective, of folks having to, I guess, ordered to work. These are the 911 folks who are yielding those calls, and right now they're understaffed and have been ordered to work under extreme circumstances. Many have had COVID and have had their, still have had to work. And so I'm just curious, like, how is the city, protecting our workers? I mean, there hasn't been any lawsuits at this point, but there seems to be some discrepancies in terms of this whole order to work situation.
Sure. Yeah, Counselor, if there are lawsuits, we're defending the city. And
even if it's, these are city workers who right now are being ordered to work under very extreme circumstances, and
yes.
many of which have experienced COVID. And I'm sure that there's some guidelines in terms of how people are protected. So can you just talk to me about what the process is in place when it's our own city workers that are being violated?
Well, that's a labor question.
Okay.
So the Office of Labor Relations would better be able to answer that than I.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is in regards to, can you talk to us about how many cases in regards to the Boston Police Department your team is right now litigating, if that's the word for this? I don't know what it's called, but.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'd ask Susan Wisey to respond.
Thank you, Counselor. We're currently representing about 50 Boston police officers, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's 50 cases, because most of the cases involve multiple defendants. So just off the top of my head, and again, I can get you a solid number very easily tomorrow, but it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 38. I can tell you I have been with the law department, as some folks know, for 35 years. And that it's from when I started back in 1985 to now, that's an extremely low number.
And how much in terms of dollars have we spent in the last year or two?
You mean for settlement or?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know that off the top of my head. I could probably get you that very easily as well tomorrow.
That would be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Bach. That is all.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Flaherty, then Campbell Edwards. Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and obviously thanks to Henry and his team in particular. I lose you.
We've got you. We're good. Oh, no, now you're muted. We had you.
There it is. Good morning, Madam Chair, and to my colleagues, and to Henry and his team, and Henry, who's been super responsive, not just now, but over the years. And so talent and a caliber of attorney working on behalf of the residents and in the corporation here in the city. With that, I just want a couple of quick questions. I wanted to get a breakdown of the execution of courts as to, and also how many cases do we try versus do we farm out to outside counsel to try it? I think there may lie an issue in terms of if our sort of younger assistant or associate corporate counsels are not getting any trial experience, that may be also a reason why they leave us in big numbers. So just a sort of a thought, but just a quick breakdown of execution of courts as to how many settlements or how many judgments in this year, and also how many cases did we, as in the city of Boston, your lawyers tried versus we engaged outside counsel, and what was the outside counsel bill this year?
Okay.
You're going to take that, Henry? You want me to do?
Oh, if you could take that, Susan,
As far as the last year, as you must appreciate, since the beginning of March of 2020 to this moment in time, there have been no jury trials because the court systems have basically been shut down. They are just now trying to ramp up. They will have a much better success in the federal district court than they will in Suffolk Superior, I'm sure. But we have a couple of trial dates towards the end of the year, jury trial dates. Be curious to see if it actually happens. But you know, for the last year, there's been no jury trials. We've had a lot of Zoom type hearings, and we've actually had a couple of Zoom bench trials, but no jury trials. We try as many cases as we possibly can. And again, a lot of that depends on the court schedule. Some years we try 15, 16 jury trials. Other years we try 3 just because of the court system and how they schedule their life around us. But we try as much as we can. The litigators try a lot of cases, and most of them tend to be, you know, the auto collision cases, which are not that difficult, frankly. There are 2 or 3 day jury trials. It's the best way for somebody to get their feet wet. We try pothole cases, which is probably even a 1 day, if not just a few hour jury trial. Again, it's a great training tool. We do try our police misconduct cases and other kinds of cases all the time in federal district court when life is normal. And it's usually 2 of us. So even if it's a younger attorney, there's always somebody else who's got more experience sitting with them. So we try most of our cases by ourselves. I mean, on occasion, something goes to outside counsel, yes. But 95% of the time, it's City of Boston Law Department that's trying cases.
Very good. And then so obviously the execution of courts based on the courts being closed, we should see the city, at least our office, should see a significant change in a projection in that front. And then similar to how our law schools partner with our district attorney's offices and 303 certifieds, do we have any opportunity to partner? We get some of the best law schools right here in Boston.
Yes.
And some of the best future legal minds. So is there an opportunity with respect to a deficiency in staffing as to whether we can partner with some of our law schools to see if we can get some third-year law students, for example, under some type of certification like 303 certified in the DA's office to get get some help, but also get them some training and experience?
We do have a relationship with some of the law schools for clerks. We do generally have, I think we had 2 clerks this summer, and we have had up to 5 in past years. So we do have relationships in that sense. We also hire our paralegals for the most part from law schools, and when these paralegals, they're generally evening students. When they graduate, we are usually able to offer them a position, which is a win-win for everybody. They know the culture of the department. We know their work ethic, and they've been trained well by our council.
Very good. And just lastly, Henry is the longest serving member, and I've served with several corporation councils. Some have been sort of more active, if you will, by engaging in the council and coming down to the chamber if necessary. And then we've seen some that do not do that. So I don't know sort of how you envision your role, but I know that there are time to time, matters pop up on the council where we need the corporation council, we need that partnership, we need that advice. And in some instances, we may even need some legal expertise at a particular hearing. And it just seems that it's been ebbs and flows in my tenure here at City Hall. Some have sort of been more active and engaging than others, and just didn't know whether you could give us a sense in terms under your leadership, what should we expect from our corporation council in terms of when issues arise, and or if we need an opinion, or if we need some type of engagement or support or testimony at a hearing. What will you and or you allow your team to do? Thank you, and I appreciate it, Madam Chair, and I'll listen for the answer.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flaherty. Under the city code, I think it's 5-5.8, 8.5. If the council votes for an opinion of the corporation council, then we will furnish an opinion. One of the dangers I see is somebody testifying and they may not have had the opportunity to do a thorough research, and all of a sudden what's said is taken as gospel. I wish I were infallible. I'm not. We would want to be as cooperative as possible, but that will depend on the given situation.
Very good.
I guess
Thank
that's
you.
the best I can do. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and that's you've always you're a stickler for sort of for procedure, and the charter arguably probably better than anyone in terms of your engagement with it. So I just have seen a variation over the years of corporation council. Some come down, some don't. And I get your point in terms of just sort of following procedure. And if we need an opinion, there's a formality and there's a process by which we can get an opinion. And so I appreciate that. Thanks, Henry. Thanks for the work you do, and appreciate the partnership that we do enjoy with you and your team. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Campbell, and then Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Councilor Bach, for your continued leadership, and thank you, of course, to the entire legal department for the work you guys do. We are frequently in contact. I was just at City Hall and ran into Adam, so it's great to see you all. I appreciate the work you're doing. I'll keep it short and sweet because I know there are other city employees waiting to get on and do their presentations. One is just a follow-up on some questions I think that were already asked around if we could get a list of the cases or settlements, not just for the police department, but other departments as well. I could do that through the chair. Sure. Don't need a question on that. And then the second question has to, maybe it's a little connected to Councilor Flaherty's point, what the decision-making process is when deciding to outsource it to a law department for assistance with a case. And so what that process is, who decides, and how do we decide which law firms we use?
Right. So I will ask Susan and Adam to weigh in here, because it's a collaborative decision. Generally, if there is a level of expertise in a particular area of the law that we just don't have the bandwidth to handle inside, we would send it out. For example, there are a number of real estate deals where the city may be offloading property, where we would want someone who has had extensive real estate experience to represent us there. If there's a high-tech matter, we would want someone with high-tech experience. to represent us. There have been negotiations with various firms in terms of licensing, and this is areas that we have gone out. And we can get you certainly a list of those matters. I don't know, in terms of the decision making, if Adam or Susan wanted to add to that.
You know, that it's I guess it's fairly simple. When something comes in, at least from my folks, it's typically a conflict of interest in representing too many defendants on our side. You know, we have a few law firms that have been doing this kind of, it's usually police cases, sometimes employment cases. We have law firms that have been dealing with these areas of law. They're very specialized. They're very nuanced. You need somebody that knows what they're talking about when they go into federal district court. I have a list of folks. I will go in and I will typically ask the corporation counsel. I will describe what the conflict of interest is and say, you know, this person hasn't worked for us for a year or so. Do you want to put them on the case? Do you want to put somebody else on the case? And that's typically how it's done, at least from my perspective. I typically don't have the kinds of cases with the funky expertise that Henry is speaking of. I typically have more like a conflict of interest type situation when multiple defendants from the city are sued over the same incident.
And just lastly, I guess the list of attorneys, so there's not like a procurement process or something, it's just a list of external firms that we use?
Right, and it's typically, we've kept the same firms over, you know, a large number of years. We don't have to go through that process because this is a matter of expertise, so we don't have to go through that sending out the request process at all. And, you know, we also rely on some firms because much like our staff salary, our outside counsel hourly rate is low. We have gone low by market standards, not low by me, but low by market standards. And sometimes, you know, we have gone to a firm and they were like, we're not, and I've had this happen to me a couple of times, we're not going to take the case because frankly, working for you is a loss of money for us because due to the hourly rate. It's at this moment in time, I believe it's $235 an hour, which anybody that works in the legal field knows is very low. I mean, it's a government rate. Some people don't mind, but I can tell you a lot of folks do. And so it's difficult. It's difficult to find folks.
And in terms of how we select, many of our firms or many of the cases that we send out have gone to former assistant corporation counsel. Again, I was talking about Sammy Nabolsi, who got was handling the Long Island Bridge case for us and related matters, environmental matters as well, as just one example.
We have a couple of those folks that, you know, used to work here. They have a wonderful foundation of knowledge in this area, and they can handle these cases. They don't have to spend months researching and coming up to speed. They know the area of law. They know where to go, how to get there, and to try these cases in federal district court. They have experience in federal district court. A lot of folks do not. So it's what we do is specialized law. It's not your general practice of law.
I see Adam trying to get in. Go ahead, Adam.
I'll just add one.
Sorry, Adam.
One thing. Oh no, that's fine. We probably have a little bit less on our side. Although like Susan mentioned, it comes up, like, for example, some telecom stuff that we needed help with, the opioid litigation, things where we really just don't have the expertise. I will say in the opioid litigation situation, because we had no sort of exposure to these types of firms going into this, we actually did do a fairly long public procurement process to sort of identify that outside counsel, but that's probably not the norm.
Thank you. And my last question, I'll leave it with the chair, who can ask it at any point in terms of the next rounds, is just if there's ever been any thought around the appointment process for the corporation council. Obviously, right now, it's exclusively the appointment of the mayor. Other municipalities do it differently. So just curious if there's been any discussion or thought around council playing a role in that or not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Henry, did you want to say anything on that?
No, that's a city charter question, actually, and it would require, I haven't heard anything about the charter being amended in that respect, but it would require a change to the charter, either home rule or referendum.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, you guys. Really appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you. So I'll just echo the same request for the list of pending cases and settlements in terms of how much is how many of the cases we are paying out on. We also had the article last year, a year or two ago, about a settlement or case that the law department chose to appeal. And it wasn't a settlement, I think it was an outright loss. And then ultimately we're paying $30 million, I think, to a city employee. We've chosen to appeal cases from the BFD, from the Boston Fire Department, and lost those cases as well. So I would like a list of those cases that are pending, those racial, especially the racial discrimination, the sexual harassment cases pending, and whether the city, in its defense, I think I'd like a little bit more analysis about when we choose to go ahead and appeal that case and when it makes sense to just let it go. Sometimes the best defense is just a settlement. And what we've seen in some of these cases, especially the high profile ones, is when we choose to gamble with that, we're losing as a city. So I just wanted to note that. And there's nothing I know Councilor Mejia talked about city employees and whatnot. There's nothing I'm sure more frustrating than to be a city employee and to have, the city in its defense against you continue to appeal or continue to push on or continue to drag out a case when if they had just simply settled and admitted essentially that could have done better, might have been cheaper for us in the end. That's one point. So do you know how many cases we have pending in appeals court right now, or that we're going to be appealing? Any decisions?
Cases of that nature?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Susan, do you know off the top
of my head, cases in the appeals courts, probably very, very few. And as far as anything coming down the road, I wouldn't know right now. I mean, that would be something that would be decided down the road at some point in time. I would also just like to point out with the settlements, I'm not sure how many years you're looking for. I also think it's important to note that this is not something we control. When a case comes to a resolution, I guess, it'd be easier to give an example. For the year 2019, we could have settled cases that cost $5 million because we had one big case that settled for $3 million. The next year, you might have cases that only settle for $250,000. That doesn't necessarily mean we did a much better job the next year. It just means that because of the court schedule and the litigation schedule, this is when a case comes to resolution. So when you're asking for cases over years, we can definitely get you that number, but it doesn't necessarily mean that one year is better than the next or worse than the next. It's just when the case is coming to sort of its end and you're in the resolution phase, whether it's a settlement or a jury verdict. So just
what
so
we
you
do have control
know that.
over, what we do have control over is when we choose to appeal and prolong.
Yes,
a case,
yes.
right. And then
we can definitely, when we
financial-
appeal, there's not
Right.
that much in the appeals process right now, I can tell you. I'll get you those numbers, definitely.
Okay. Right. And then obviously I think a cost comparison, right? So when we chose to appeal and what that cost in terms of litigation and defense, and then ultimately when we, in terms of what the city had to pay out, maybe it would have been obviously cheaper to settle earlier. The other thing I wanted to know was whether, because there's for folks who are watching, there's an interesting dynamic between the law department and the city council. In one vein, they do defend us. So they defend us, right, in terms of if the city council is sued. In the other vein, the law department is not neutral. when it comes to its policy positions, right? It is, we disagree oftentimes. And sometimes what I find frustrating is that the law department's legal opinion is very much, and rightfully so, in defense of the mayor or in defense of the head of the city at the time. So we are disagreeing policy-wise, but when the law department speaks, it speaks as though this is the legal opinion, and though it's almost like a judicial opinion, like there's a neutrality to it. And I think what would be helpful for me and other city councilors is when there's a policy decision and it's just a disagreement versus a actual legal neutral. There's no other way to see this kind of way. I'm trying to think of a good example of this. Maybe it's the Fair Work Week example, or when we were going back and forth over the charter. It's just those moments where I think it should just be very clear there's a policy and defense for the mayor coming through this opinion versus this is just a neutral, this is how this happens. So I'll just note that as a city councilor, and maybe that's because you've never had this many annoying amount of lawyers on the city council to go back and forth. I'm sure I'll say it. I'm sure it's got to be annoying as all hell. But at the same time, I think that, that's a frustration on the other end of this, because I'm like, this is an opinion that favors the mayor versus a legal, just this is the A side, this is the B side. So I think that's a frustration that I have. And I think that it would serve us better if it was if in the opinions it was, this is the A side, this is the B side, as a legal department, or, maybe, yeah. So that I'll just say that, because there are times even on, when we even, like, for example, with the transfer fee, we even, after we got it through here, we were both looking at this, and and we both were like, yeah, after the first $2 million, I was like, no, at $2 million to determine when the transfer fee kicked in. So there's times where I think, in terms of the pushback, that we should be more clear of where the policy is ending in the defense of the mayor, right? And where it's just, this is the A and B part. My other point that I'd like to make, and I would ask, is, do you apply the Boston residency job policy to when you're looking for outside counsel?
Yes, definitely.
Right.
And if somebody lives outside the city, we have to tell them, look, you can't become a city employee unless you are living within the city of Boston.
No. To outside counsel. So when you go to the law firms.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, they're contract employees. They're not employees. They're contractors, independent.
So
contractors.
Having worked at a law firm, right? I worked at one of the larger law firms. The way in which those law firms were becoming more diverse was the demands of in-house counsel and city governments and other places like that basically said, we're not going to contract with you unless you are more diverse, unless you are recruiting, unless you are pulling in people directly to your law firm. So if you're not asking that of law firms that you're going out to, and you're repeatedly going back to the same law firms, then I don't think you're we as a city have spoken morally through our Boston residents job policy that we expect our city money to go to at least half of Boston residents, 40% people of color, and 12% women. Now, those are minimums, of course, and that's in a trade perspective, but we've spoken morally that we believe our money should be going toward diverse things. So if you're not applying that, do you ask or make demands on your outside counsel that they support or that they show their diversity?
Not that I'm aware of. I have not.
So you don't have a policy within the law department?
We do not, no. I thank you for bringing it up, though.
So what would that policy look like? I'd like to know that there's going to be a policy for when you are putting out contracts for outside counsel to take on our cases with our city money. What would that look like? I mean, I actually think that the Boston residency job policy may not be as necessary in terms of residency of living in the city of Boston,
Sure.
because a lot of law firms recruit from the entire state. But in terms of women and people of color.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Many of the firms that we contract with are women are the principal partners, and we've used them. And I'm thinking of Kay Hodge, who is a woman of color, who at Stoneman Chandler, and Fran Hogan at Line Woodworth and Everts, we use for real estate, who is obviously a woman. Sammy Nabolsi is a Palestinian American who came from our shop and who has been doing a fantastic job on the Long Island Bridge case. Just 3 examples, okay? But I see what you mean, and I think
I want to be clear that those are not examples of a policy, nor are they examples of you actually recruiting or pushing for or demanding that those who get city money to do city services are diverse.
that is
right?
that you are
Those
correct.
not examples, right? Those are just people that work for and we've worked with before. I think
yes.
for me, I'd like to see before the end of this budget process, your new policy for diversity and in terms of who you will contract with my tax dollars, and demanding of those law firms that they be diverse and that they hire diversity. What you're not getting directly, you should be getting indirectly then. And I'm telling you, it works. When Koch finally said, we'll be damned if we give out any more money to these large law firms that are predominant. I see your gavel, Counselor Bach, but I mean, I want to be very clear. This works. This actually works to help our legal department to become more diverse. I was the first Black associate for Holland & Knight, summer associate. And I know it had a lot to do with the demands of the clients of the firm. So you have the power of the purse in a special way. I'm disappointed that you have not used that to demand more of the legal field. But for me, in this budget, I would like to see how you're going to make those demands going forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, as Susan said, we only pay $2.35 an hour generally. So, you know, if we make demands of that may come into play. But I totally understand your point, and thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I'll just put a few more things on the docket, but I'm mindful of our other departments, and I want to let law go. So if somebody has a burning question, raise your blue hand. But otherwise, I'm gonna just put a couple more things on the agenda and then go to the next department. So definitely we'll be following up. I think the list of where we are, what settlements, what's in appeal court, what's our total numbers that we're putting out for outside counsel. I think folks would like to understand that kind of the shape of things in law on that front. And I do just want to emphasize that I also think that in the first part, in addition to the Councilor Edwards' push just now on the question of diversity metrics for your contracts, I think that part of what I heard her pushing for was like a little bit more of a sense that like at what point, in terms of us making those decisions about what to appeal and not appeal as a city, at what point do we decide that there's like a category of things we've been appealing that are a bad bet for us? Like if we've had a department that has, and I know it's your guys' job as our lawyers to say that our departments are not doing these things and defend them. But if we've had a department that's made a series of discriminatory decisions, for instance, and you've got a lot of cases and we're just losing them ultimately because is there a moment where the law department zooms out and says, hey, we actually think like we're just not winning these because of the facts on the ground. And so at some point it might be in our interest to settle instead of drive everything to the last appeal. That was just, I think it's also a question that I have. And if you have any thoughts on it, Henry, would love to hear them. So that, and then I just want to, I want to say thank you to Henry and Adam and team. I've been pushing. I don't think that DCR actually has the right to put meters on this section in my district, and so we don't need to talk about it now. But just like we'll continue to follow up on that, and appreciate your guys' work and the diligence of the team on that front. And then, in addition to that question about pellet, decisions and kind of assessing overall policy-wise where we are. I guess my one other question, Henry, and this is, it's niche and we could go into it at greater length later, but I've become concerned about the fact that there's an opinion on file, I think by you, that the city's not on the hook to represent the groundwater trust in cases where they, found themselves under threat of litigation. It seems to me like
That's
in
correct.
the history of how that's been set up, how it's funded and how it's intended, while it is quasi-independent, it's to me clearly an organ of the city. And I have, a number of because my constituency, is a lot of the places that have groundwater challenges. A number of my constituents serve on that board. And I think asking them to take the legal liability for that situation strikes me as non-parallel with a lot of the other boards we have. So would love to hear on that. And then that again,
Sure.
sort of echoing Councillor Edwards on that appellate question.
Okay, thanks. Maybe we could, on the appellate question, I think we'd probably have to regroup and get you something. The Groundwater Trust, one of my favorite boards. I worked with them when I was General Counsel at Water and Sewer for 18 years, and worked with our engineering department on the Water and Sewer engineering department on recharge systems on Back Street in the Back Bay and in the Fenway, in the alley off Hemingway Street. And I think they've been very successful, but I've been through this with Christian Simonelli, and I'd be happy to go through it with you as well.
Great. Well, I would love to go through it. It might be something that I ask my council colleagues to do an ordinance on or something. I feel like while they have set up as a 501c3, they're pretty clearly not a nonprofit that we are contracting with in a kind of traditional sense. So but another conversation, maybe not on this Zoom. Did you want to say something?
I'm all set out.
Okay, great. And then I'll just echo again, I think that we all know that, to Susan's point about multiple defendants, I think we all know that in a different context, the mayor's lawyers would be conflicted out of also representing the city council on a number of the things where we're in a more adversarial relationship. And it just so happens that by charter, that's not the setup. And so, Councillor Edwards has named some of that tension. I think we all experience it when we have disagreements about legislative and legal matters. And, I think that'll continue to be a theme, but I also just want to strongly stress how much we appreciate the work that you guys do representing us as a body, as you are currently actively doing, and representing the city in general. So, I hope a productive tension on that front, but just don't want that to obscure the importance of your work.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and members of the committee.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to let the law department go, and I'm going to actually ask Arts and Culture and Tourism to present to us back to back, and then we'll do questions for both, just so that we don't keep tourism waiting indefinitely, since these triple hearings are a bit of a logistical challenge. But we will go to Arts and Culture first, and I think let me just pull up my listing here. So I think we'll go to Chief Elliot Ortega. Carl Elliot Ortega is our Chief of Arts and Culture. And I think I'll let her introduce her team, but I think Wither is Nida Faria and Karen Goodfellow. And anyone else you want to introduce, Chief?
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, counselors. It's good to see everyone. Yes, we have with us Nida Faria, our Director of Administration and Finance, and Karen Goodfellow, our Director of Public Art. And we do have a little bit of a presentation. We will try to go quickly through it, but being the arts office, we did want to share some visuals of what we do. And I'm just going to share my screen here. One moment. Is that showing up okay? for
Yes.
everyone? Okay.
Yes, it's showing up. We can see it. And I'll just take this opportunity to say also that we were joined some time ago by Counselor Michelle Wu. So go ahead, Chief.
Thank you. So we wanted to share a quick overview of what we've been doing, some of what's happened in FY21 and the investments that are coming up for FY22, just to give some orientation to the rest of our office since we haven't done a full hearing before. And wanted to start just with our core competencies, beginning with direct support. So almost all of our reopening funds in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture go directly to artists or arts and cultural organizations through grants and small contracts. 67% of our contracts are to women-owned or minority-owned businesses, and our annual funds for individuals go to income-qualified artists. In many cases, these are the only funding opportunities readily accessible to individuals and to small organizations. Place-based cultural work includes our public art program, which you'll hear more about in a second, cultural planning and placekeeping work, including city and state cultural districts, and supporting the development of affordable artist-lit workspaces, convening and research to support the cultural sector and find ways to move important conversations forward. As you can imagine, this last year, a lot of that has been about COVID-19, including how arts organizations have changed their business models, how they're continuing to serve their communities when forced to go digital and cancel events. Communications and engagement. This is not just the marketing of arts and culture events, which we do, but also how our office communicates the importance of arts and culture, as well as really delving into new creative and equitable approaches to community engagement and civic participation through the work that our local artists do. We foster partnerships and collaborations that create new resources, pilot new ideas, and address important issues in the cultural sector. And lastly, management of spaces and events, direct management, which includes the Strand Theater and City Hall galleries. Of course, this year, both of those spaces have been mostly closed to the public, but we have been able to continue the galleries online and build on the Strand as a community anchor by making it available as a COVID testing and now vaccine site. And of course, within each of those buckets, there are many, many programs, grant programs like you see here, $490,000 to organizations, over $500,000 going directly to artists, and other programs that you might be familiar with, like the Artist Resource Desk and our Poet Laureate program, which we just added a youth poet laureate to this year. And as I was mentioning, this whole year has been, as with everyone and everything, a pivot. A lot of our efforts have been related to relief funding and to relief support. We were one of the first cities in the country to create an artist relief fund, and we redistributed $1 million in CARES Act funding for arts and cultural organizations. We also received funding from the National Endowment for the Arts that we were able to leverage into a larger relief fund specifically for BIPOC arts organizations. And that was in partnership with the Boston Foundation and Barr Foundation. We also focused on cultural and racial equity. At the beginning of 2020, we started our own internal equity training for the office, working as a team to create equity goals for our office and also for how we work collaboratively towards those goals. Following the uprisings for racial justice around the country, we helped launch the Cultural Equity Learning Community, led by Arts Connect International. And this was an online learning community open to arts and culture leaders committed to building racial equity in the sector. And this was all online, go at your own pace curriculum that included peer groups and other kinds of supports. And you can see the numbers here on the uptake of this, which was overwhelming. We did not expect to have, in the end, I think over 1,000 registrants. And we're in conversations about how to build on this work. This year, we also kicked off the first year of the Radical Imagination for Racial Justice Grant in partnership with Mass College of Art and Design. This program funds BIPOC artists to imagine what a racially just future looks like in partnership with their communities. There's some really exciting work being done. This is an intergenerational group of artists, and we've been able to reach artists across the city who haven't had this level of funding and support in the past. And now I will pass it over to Karen Goodfellow to talk about our Artisan Residence Program and the Public Art Program.
Thank you, Chief Elliott Ortega, and good morning, counselors. I'm Karen Goodfellow, Director of Public Art. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm really happy to be here and excited to get to share a little bit of the amazing work we've been doing with you. The Boston Artisan Residence Program, it's an artist residency program in which a multidisciplinary cohort of artists, which includes poets, painters, and drummers, collaborate with a parallel cohort of City of Boston partners to explore, critique, and reimagine city initiatives at the intersection of civil service, social justice, and artistic practice. Simply put, through Boston Air, we are compensating artists to work with us, with our creative and generous colleagues in various city departments to move forward and align our city thinking and actions on critical equity issues. This fourth year, we were scheduled to start the week City Hall shifted to work from home. Our monthly partner circles and artist sessions took place online. We had expected to work face-to-face with communities, but nonetheless, we built authentic communities with each other. And to reach our neighbors, many artists held online gatherings and forums. For example, Victor Young, working with the VIP program at the Boston Public Health Commission, gathered with students, talked about activism and their needs this year, and ultimately advocated for the BLA to institute wellness blocks into their weekly schedules, with the intention for students and teachers to have time to care for themselves as part of their work. Golden held a trans and non-binary town hall at which Bostonians who do not have a clear department to turn to for their needs were able to speak to their experiences and name ways the city can better support transgender and non-binary Bostonians. Erin Genia, working with the Office of Emergency Management, developed a cultural emergency response. She states that the crises we are experiencing, like climate change and institutional racism, are widespread and complex, interconnected and expanding, and that they have cultural origins. As part of her work, she held an online panel series entitled Confronting Colonial Myths in Boston Public Space, in which she invited Indigenous leaders and artists to address how symbols perpetuating colonial myths affect the lives of Indigenous people in the city. We are thrilled that we've been able to move the Air Program Manager position held by Sharon Amaguni to the FY22 city budget, and are very thankful for that. As we look ahead to future residencies, we are examining how we move beyond the flash of testing and imagining to lasting systemic and deep cultural change. Kara, next slide, please, Kara. I'm going to talk a little bit about public art. We've really taken this year to renew our approach to public art. We have 28 city-driven projects in various phases. These are long-term projects that last over 5 years. 15 in active phases, meaning anywhere from artist selection to installation, 6 in RFP draft, 5 under construction, and 13 of these projects are funded through the Percent for Art program, with 50% of those Percent for Art contracts with minority and women business enterprises. We are supporting important community-initiated public art projects through staff support and capital funds. With all of these incredible projects, we are very happy that we'll be able to have a senior public art project manager in the FY22 budget. We have also continued with the Transformative Public Art Program. In summer 2020, we supported over 20 projects that created opportunities for celebration, connection, and wellness that challenged our understanding of forms of public art could take by including web-based and socially distanced projects. Next slide, please. Public art relies upon community members, especially artists. Here are a few of the artists we're currently working with. And I'm going to move very quickly through slides capturing our public art program because the artwork tells a better story than I will. Next slide, please. This is North Square Stories by Ann Hirsch and Jeremy Anger, and that's in the North End. This is Width and Web by Matthew Hinsman in Jamaica Plain. This is a project by Joe Wardwell in collaboration with Nakia Hill and the Y-Lab writers from 826 Boston at the Roxbury Library. This is The Creative by Simon Donovan and Ben Olmsted in Fenway at the Boston Arts Academy. This is Memory Diffusion, also at the Boston Arts Academy by Masari Studios in Fenway. This is Hyde Square, an artwork by Christina Pereño in Jamaica Plain. This is Unus Mundus by Monica Bravo at the East Boston Police Station. This is a project in development by Casto Solano at the Vine Street Community Center in Roxbury. This is a project by Team Play, which is Marlon Forrester and Studio Loose at the DeWitt Playground in Roxbury. This is a portfolio for Destiny Palmer, who's doing an interior piece at the Vine Street Community Center in Roxbury. And these are some artworks that will end up at City Hall on the elevators. So the two at the top are the final design. The third is a draft, but working with Destiny Palmer, Maya Erdely, and Lily Shee and Crystal B. Wagner. This is a work by Jeremy Sobek Harrison, who will be doing a piece at the Roxbury Library. And this is work by Ricardo DM5 Gomez, who will also be doing a piece at the Roxbury Library. This is work by Jenny Savin's studio, who is doing the Ruggles Corridor integrated artwork. And this next group, these are community initiated projects, which were started by community groups, and we are happy that we are, funded to support these projects both in staff time and through capital funds this year. This is the Justice O'Gordine African American Veterans Memorial with Karen Udemy and Fern Cunningham, who we recently lost, who is a great contributor to our public art community in Boston. And that is proposed by the Friends and Veterans of Edward Gordine Park. And here we have the Frederick Douglass Legacy Project with Mario Chiodo, Paul Goodnight, and Sasaki Associates by the Douglass Memorial Sculpture Committee. And this is bookmarked at the Mattapan branch of the Boston Public Library with Stu Schechter. And here we have Emergent Memory by Recite, and that is in Bay Village. This is the Coconut Grove Memorial. And lastly, we have The Embrace with Hank Willis Thomas, which will be on the Boston Common. We're in the process of creating a database of the city's art collection, in addition to having a comprehensive archive that will facilitate maintenance and research and various analyses. The project will include a searchable database that will be going live this spring with a mapping component available in the summer of 2021. In anticipation of public access to information about the collection, we've launched a map on our website that identifies public murals in Boston. We're continuing to make additions. We've been working with our colleagues in Do It on this project through their story map program and are super excited about sharing it out, but this is only a fraction of the collection that will be accessible this summer through the database and e-museum. We're also happy to be able to care for our collection. We invest in public art conservation. This funding ensures that the works can continue to be enjoyed over time. And lastly, in response to a national dialogue and local demand for dialogue in our public monuments, we held public meetings over the summer. We shared information online, created a survey, and collected written testimony. We prioritized creating opportunities for Bostonians to really listen and understand each other, even when they did not agree, and ultimately voted to remove the Emancipation Group from display in Park Square. And with that, I will pass to Naida. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Naida Faria. I'm the Director of Administration and Finance. And this year for the Strand Theater in 2020 has remained pretty much dark with the exception of COVID vaccines and testing. So for FY22, we're looking forward in partnering with small local art organizations for programming at the Strand. And this would include a number of dollars going into Boston art organizations and artists, increase the stability of small arts organizations that have been impacted by COVID. This will also create youth jobs, especially youth of color. And it will also increase jobs for each production that happens at the Strand. It will increase the number of our target audience and also bring some economic development to the Uplands Corners area. We will also be doing a capital assessment study and kind of figuring out what the reopening costs to bring back performance to the Strand. And I'll pass it on to Chief.
Great, thank you both. Lastly, our largest proposed investment for FY22 is focused on supporting arts recovery, specifically job opportunities and training for artists. As I mentioned at the beginning, this year has been incredibly hard for creative workers, and yet we know that artists are really uniquely qualified to help us with so many of the issues that we're facing as a city, whether that be fighting social isolation, the need for connection and joy, more equitable community engagement and outreach. So we're working on a process for these funds of supporting hiring artists as a part of the city's recovery, including providing training for city staff who want to incorporate artists into their work, and training for the artists who want to be prepared to apply for those jobs. And that is it for us. We're really excited about the continued investments in the arts and appreciate the time to share some overview here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cara, for that excellent presentation. And would love it if you all could send it over our way. If you haven't already, send it via OBM or Chantal or just straight to Michelle Goldberg. That'd be great. And now I'm going to go straight to Kate Davis, the Director of the Mayor's Office of Tourism, Sports and Entertainment, who I think has brought Sean O'Connor, her Director of ANF, and Midori Morikawa, who's the, Midori, is Midori with us?
No, Midori's not here today.
Okay, I thought not. Okay, so I was gonna say I should go to Midori first if she's here, but if she's not, we'll go to you, Kate. So
Thank you.
and grateful to have you here. So
Thank
and
you,
thanks
thank
for
you.
waiting. I know this is a triple hearing like this is a bit of a slog. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Kate Davis. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Tourism, Sports, and Entertainment. Our mission is to advance tourism in Boston and promote participation in public celebrations from Boston residents and visitors to our city. We support the tourism industry in Boston by producing and supporting diverse events in every neighborhood, supporting film and TV production, and marketing the city to conventions and visitors. In FY21, unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, tourist attractions were forced to close their doors, and numerous conventions and public events had to cancel or postpone. Tourism is one of Boston's most important industries. We lost about 70% of our forecasted visitors last year due to COVID. And pre-COVID, roughly 10% of jobs in Greater Boston came from this sector, while it also contributed to supporting our cultural and historic preservation. Building the sector back up is crucial to Boston's future. In spite of the pandemic, our office still celebrated holidays and tried to provide entertainment to the residents of Boston. Our top accomplishments for this past year span tourism, sports, and entertainment. Tourism. In terms of tourism, we launched a major tourism campaign and provided extensive outreach to the tourism sector at the same time. Our all-inclusive campaign, which we just launched this past April, when we as a city started to work on reopening, we planned to build the city back stronger and more equitably. This led us to issue an RFP to assemble a local tourism campaign to draw diverse tourists to take advantage of all that Boston has to offer as we reemerge safely through recovery and reopening. The RFP was awarded to a partnership led by Colette Phillips Communications, working together with Proverb Marketing and the CVB. This was the largest contract the city has awarded to a minority women-owned business. We also provided a lot of outreach to the tourism sector. As previously mentioned, COVID-19 has had a devastating effect on the tourism industry. With information constantly changing, the Office of Tourism, Sports, and Entertainment became a hub for information seekers and a resource for guiding our tourism stakeholders through unprecedented times. We navigated answering continuous queries, working with the Boston Public Health Commission and the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing, and we participated in weekly meetings with our tourism partners, such as the Greater Boston Convention Visitors Bureau, Rev 250, the Freedom Trail Foundation, and we participated in all the small business public conference calls. When we entered into new phases, we made sure to reach out and explain each mandate thoroughly, and if necessary, reached out to agencies to provide more information. Sports. We are working on various sports-related initiatives, including the Boston Sports Walk. We're in the process of planning a Boston Sports Walk, a walking trail connecting important sports history sites through the city of Boston. We are currently developing content for the walk with our external partners with an equity lens. The Boston Marathon. I sat on the BAA's COVID-19 task force to navigate the process of figuring out whether the event could continue, be postponed, or canceled. When the decision was made to postpone, we resumed our monthly meetings of the operations committee to help plan the October 11th event. World Cup 2026. Our office continues to work with the Kraft Group on their bid to host the 2026 World Cup at Gillette Stadium. And finally, the Laver Cup. This is a global tennis tournament that was postponed this year, and we're continuing to work with their leadership team to ensure that Boston's local tennis community is engaged and represented in the planning process for this fall's event. Finally, entertainment. The entertainment category encompasses our work with the film industry, as well as free and family-friendly virtual and COVID-aware events that we've produced. As far as film industry goes, we have allowed film to take place in the city of Boston during the COVID-19 pandemic in accordance with public health guidelines. The Film Bureau works closely with the Boston Public Health Commission to review both COVID safety narratives and site plans to ensure they meet Boston standards before bringing the application to the Film Committee for review. Thus far, we've been able to successfully guide major production companies, national and local commercials, television shows, and small and student documentaries through the process. For virtual and COVID-aware events, the Office of Tourism, Sports, and Entertainment produced and supported many free events throughout the city. Highlights include the Boston Social Fitness Festival, our virtual Gospel Fest, the virtual Boston Pride. We did a drive-in movie theater, a drive-in movie series, virtual Friday afternoon concerts, and we did a holiday gift bag distribution to children across the city in lieu of the Mayor's Enchanted Trolley Tour. Throughout the pandemic, we have continued to market Boston as a tourist and film destination. We've promoted public events and provided free, accessible entertainment. In the coming year, we will continue to work with numerous city departments, the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, and our local neighborhood community groups to help bring events to the city for residents and visitors. As far as the revolving fund goes, those funds we receive are rental fees from City Hall Plaza, and since it's under construction, we haven't received any revenue for that fund. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. And I'm going to go to the top of the order. I'll hold my questions for the end. So I think Councillor Flynn is first, and then it'll be Councillor Braden. Councillor Flynn, you can ask questions to both arts and tourism, or do them together.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bork, Chair Bork. Thank you to all the panelists for being here and for the work you're doing. Just want to see what type of, in the arts community, Chief, obviously it's been a difficult year for the Asian and Asian American community in Boston as well. You're working with the Powell Arts Center on various programs, but what else do you have scheduled in the future? I just want to make sure that as we go forward, that we do include Asian artists in all aspects of our civic life. So just want to ask what your opinion is on how we move forward with that.
Sure, thank you for that question. We are funding various Asian cultural groups in Boston through our BCC grants this year, but I know there's been specific interest in trying to elevate Asian American culture, artists, trying to really highlight artwork that fights this anti-Asian discrimination that's going on right now. And there have been different campaigns in other cities that have done that with artists. I think BCNC is working on one right now that we'll be supportive of, and just see how we can work with them to elevate that campaign. So we're supportive of various efforts going on, and I think that individual artists and artwork can do a lot to elevate the visibility of that community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's an important issue for me, and would like for us to do more outreach into the Asian community, especially in arts and culture. The other question I have is what type of outreach, whether it's tourism and sports, but what type of outreach are we doing to residents in keeping them engaged, residents in public housing? You know, we see these great athletes coming into Boston and to play sports at the Boston Garden or over in Foxborough or one of these places, but what impact does that have on my residents in public housing? I represent the largest number of public housing. We're down the road a little bit from the Boston Garden, might as well be, 10,000 miles away for a lot of these young people. So how are we connecting sports, professional sports with residents in public housing?
Thank you, Councillor. This year has been difficult because there hasn't been a lot of sporting events. But whenever we have an opportunity to bring people in, we work with the Office of Neighborhood Services to let them know. For example, with the Labor Cup, we've been working with Tenacity, who works with a lot of kids groups, and BPS to come in and see these like world famous players do their practices. And for any opportunity that we can bring in, especially BPS kids, then that's usually what we do. As far as celebrations with sports, which our office does, and we've had the great opportunity over the years to have many celebrations, those are open to everybody in the city. As you well know, people line the streets to see all of that. But if we ever had a famous sports person that was going to come to the city, we would make sure to do outreach to all the neighborhoods to make sure everybody had equal access to those events.
Okay, and my final question before I make one more comment, what type of outreach are we doing in arts and culture or in sports to people that don't speak English? What type of communication are we having with them? What type of interaction are we having with them, and how are we engaging with them?
So we have looked at how we can translate more of our applications. I think when we're thinking about communications with folks who don't have proficiency in, particularly in writing something in English, we've been focusing a lot on access to our funds. So we've been thinking about that a lot through how we can actually translate applications and the application processes that we have available. I think it's been challenging to figure out the best way to do that. So we have in the past offered applications in different languages and made them available. And we haven't seen huge uptake of that. So I think that that's a question that's ongoing for us about what the right way is to actually make sure that people can take advantage of that. Or I think it's more a question of whether people feel like that's something for them that they can use. So one thing that we have talked about is, especially with the Boston Cultural Council applications, is the idea of hiring people who are fluent in those most spoken languages to actually do office hours with people where they help them directly complete an application in their own language and can answer questions about the process and the funding and have it be much more one-on-one and personal. So that's one way that we've been thinking about language access. And I don't know, Nida, if there's anything you would want to add to that.
Sure. And in some occasion, there has been, outreach to our office, and myself and another staff member speak Spanish. So we were able to walk them through the application. So there is, we have staff that are able to speak in another language.
Okay. And my final comment is, could I ask when there are events in my district, if I could get notified beforehand, because I would like to let my constituents know about them. They may want to take advantage of different events that are happening. I want to make sure that they are aware of them. I communicate everything, all my messages in Spanish. I communicate all my messages in Cantonese as well. So I want to make sure my residents have a fair shake here as well.
We'll absolutely make sure that happens.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the great work that you're doing on behalf of the residents of Boston.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Next up is Councillor Braden, and then it's Councillor Mejia. Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for your presentation this morning. Let's start with arts and culture. So do you work with Boston Public Schools to showcase the work of young artists in the school system?
Yes, so we, in a normal year, we would have a large show at City Hall from BPS schools and students. And we're actually exploring now with the arts team at BPS if there are kind of alternative ways that we can do that. Perhaps even using storefronts and other spaces that could be activated. So we're trying to find ways to do that, in COVID when the City Hall is not able to be as publicly accessible.
I think it's great that you have a show in City Hall, but I also feel that, especially out here in Ulster and Brighton, people aren't going to go to City Hall to see the art. So I think just identifying other venues where we can showcase the art. A few years ago, one of the most amazing art exhibits I've been to was a pop-up in a local cafe in Brighton Centre. The senior graduating class from Brighton High had a gallery. They put up their artwork, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Someone walked in and bought a picture for $500. It was unbelievable. And I really feel that we're missing an opportunity. These are the next generation of a diverse population of young artists that we need to really cultivate and give them places in our neighborhoods that their work can be seen. And also that will help, especially in Ulster and Brighton, really make a good connection with the young, with the students who are in our high schools, and help the community feel that they're our students, they're our kids, and this is their wonderful work. So I really feel quite strongly about that. Also, the Civic Moxie report that your office commissioned, looking at art and culture in Alston, Brighton, where are we at with that, and what are the next steps?
Yeah, so we should have a full draft completed by May. And then the next step would be to take that back out to a community meeting and get feedback on it, especially, well, to make sure that we got kind of the description of all of the issues and feedback correct, but then also to get feedback on the implementation items and next steps. There will be quite a few of them because the process was pretty robust. And as you know, there have been a lot of community advocates who have been super involved. So I think we want to go back out and say, you know, did we get this right? And then what do we want to prioritize going forward? And also being really, I think, clear that a lot of that is going to have to be in partnership across different city departments and agencies. So there are some things that we can wholly own in arts and culture, but a lot of the issues are related to BPDA, in particular, some housing related things. So making sure that we're bringing those departments along with us in that process. But May and a community meeting are the next steps.
Very good. And you know, we've talked about this, the loss of performance space, the loss of studio space. You know, I think if we're going to save our artist community in Alston Brighton, I think we really have to have a much more proactive approach to, and I think that we can bring that out in the conversation around the Civic Moxie report when it comes. We have to be really intentional to make it happen. But we are losing our artist community pretty rapidly due to gentrification and development that's displacing people. So that is a concern. Let's see. And then on the sports and tourism side, is the head of the Charles happening this year?
That has not been determined yet. They haven't made a decision yet.
That's a big one out this way.
Yeah.
And in terms of neighborhood and community events, do you bring events out to the different neighborhoods, or are you? Yeah,
we do events in every neighborhood, including Alston Brighton.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I know we've had I think we're very hungry and have a huge appetite to bring events. People are anxious to get out and join in, meet their neighbors and enjoy events in the neighborhood. So we're looking forward to that. Is there a predicted timeline, or are we just really taking it week by week?
With the governor and mayor's announcements on Mondays, we can slowly start to make plans. Up until before Monday, we really didn't have a timeline for when events could start happening. So now we're already on the phone trying to figure out things for Independence Day, working with the community parades. They want the parades to be smaller capacity, so we're working them through those guidelines. We work with the Consumer Affairs and Licensing, who permits those events. And I mean, in this weekend, we're helping out an event in Nubian Square. It's Savor the Square. We do them on every Saturday of every month up until October. So we have been doing these sort of small things, but now that we have a timeline in place, we can start planning for more and more things.
That's good. And another question for Cara, is there an inventory of public art that the city owns in the different neighborhoods, or where will we find that?
Yep, so that's the public art collections database that we're working on right now. So we're compiling that. It'll be the first time that the city actually has a database with that entire collection in it. Alston will actually be really thoroughly documented because we've done some of that as a part of the planning effort with Civic Moxie. But we'll have, Karen, can you just remind us what the timeline is for that being available?
Yeah, we're hoping for this spring. So Counselor, we talked a little bit about how we have this test version of it up with the mural maps, which you can find on our website now, and people are really enjoying engaging with, especially now when people aren't comfortable going in museums or things. So I'd recommend checking that out on our website, but we're hoping this spring to have both the searchable database and the map available on the website.
And the other question I had was, are there resources for, because very often a lot of what we see out here are local artists sort of doing, we have people put exhibits up in the libraries, etc. Are there resources to support those more small scale grassroots events and shows?
Yes, so folks can apply to the Opportunity Fund to bring an arts experience to their community. And that's a small grant that's available throughout the year. And artists can apply for that. People doing creative work in their community can apply for it. And it's really targeted for that, exactly what you were just describing. And we try to make that a quick turnaround. That's why it's offered throughout the year, so that, you don't have to, it's not a yearly cycle or something like that. It can be more responsive. So that would be fun. Yeah.
Very good. And I'll check out your mural maps as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. Councillor Mejia and then Councillor Flaherty.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just a few questions. I'm really excited to see the arts and culture. I am on the committee, and so really grateful for all your hard work. So mine are just kind of pretty general. I'm curious in regards to, I'm sure you all remember when the Roxbury Love mural came down with no public notice. A lot of people lost trust in the city of Boston, who they believe should be preserving these important works. So I'm just curious, how is the arts and culture pushing for the preservation of Black and Brown art? I'm also curious about what neighborhoods are we seeing the most funding go towards for community art projects? How are we working alongside our public schools to create avenues for young people to design their own artistic spaces? So I'd love to hear how we're cultivating the next generation of artists. And with that, especially for paid internship opportunities, what is the city doing to leverage its networks with Hill Holiday and other advertising agencies that are across the city that can help support young people who are interested in graphic design and things of that nature? And then I'm also curious, BAM Fest, who Kate Kat has been doing a lot of really great work. She's also brought to light how difficult it is for a lot of artists to access space to be able to, showcase, whether it be through a concert or just a convening. I'm curious what role the city is playing to really help artists connect with spaces or even businesses where they can display their artwork. And then for the tourism folks, it's great to see a bigger push for tourism in neighborhoods beyond the same usual suspects. But I'm curious to know, how are we making sure that increased tourism would not contribute to displacement in low income communities? And I'm also, just on a side note, really happy to see how intentional the art and cultures folks are doing to elevate LGBTQ art. So thank you for that effort. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to see if I can, am I answering all of them? You might need to restate a couple. For the first one, about murals and Roxbury Love, we tried to really learn from that process. I know that was devastating to a lot of people, and we heard from a lot of community members about it. One thing that we've been really excited about in the last year and a half maybe, is that we have been able to get approval for using Percent for Art capital funds to commission murals and other forms of art that don't fit the standard kind of sculpture, on a pedestal, that is kind of a kind of antiquated way we think of thinking about public art. So by doing that and being able to use those funds for murals and street art and other things, we're going to be able to make sure that those pieces are a part of the city's collection, that we're able to fund and support them, that we're able to make sure that artists are getting paid well for doing that work. And so that's a really important piece. That means that that's something that is a permanent part of what we do and in the city collection for forever. The other thing is, one of the investments for FY22 is in conservation, and that will be the first time we've had any funding really dedicated to doing that. So it's been great to have the Percent for Art program and get all of these public art projects going, but until this point, we haven't had a regular, reliable source of funding to be able to maintain and check up on and really make sure that those pieces are something that we can support going forward, not just getting them in the ground or on a wall, but actually something that can be a part of work forever. So we're really excited about being able to have that funding. Even the database is a really important part of this, because we'll be able to track artworks in the city that we commission, and we'll be able to say, you know, they need to be monitored. We'll be able to say they have agreements attached to them. Sometimes this is the difficulty of having to navigate community benefits and other things that might be attached to pieces. And so we'll be able to actually track all of that ourselves in a really coordinated way. So those are all improvements and investments that we're excited about, that I think will address that. With youth and creative youth development, you know, we've been having a lot of conversations, a lot of the convenings this year that we've been a part of. We've been hosting with Investors and others who do work specifically with young people, whether that's in schools as art teachers or through organizations, creative youth development organizations. And a lot of that has been about pathways. So I think we're having some productive conversations there. We're really conveners in that space. And the next step, I think, is exactly what you described, which is going to our creative industries and saying, hey, you need to create paid slots so that there is actually a pathway, a clear pathway that a young person can take, even if we've built all of this support for them, you know, through middle school or high school, where are they actually going to go from there to get that real life experience? So those conversations are happening, and we feel really, really strongly about our private sector playing a role in that. And that was 2 of the questions you mentioned. I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
Cara, why don't I think we should go to Kate, just because Councillor Mejia is going to run out of time. So let's go to Kate, and then if
Okay,
Councillor Mejia
I think her question was, she was asking how our tourism efforts is working towards not displacement in communities. So with the all-inclusive campaign, our whole job is, it's sort of a 2-part answer. Our whole job is to sort of bring up these neighborhoods that aren't normally seen and not highlighted in a typical tourism campaign. The part 2 of the answer would be that pre-COVID, 10% of jobs came from our industry. Many of those people working in our industries came from those marginalized communities. So when we can bring people back and bring conferences back and hotel rooms are full, it trickles down to restaurants being full and hotels hiring people and restaurants hiring people. So it has a good effect on all communities.
Thank you, Kate. Councillor Mejia, the timer's about to go off in 7 seconds, but did you have any follow-up? Neither of those. All right, I think we are.
No, Councilor Bach, I'm all set. Thank you so much. I'm about to get vaccinated, so I gotta go. Thank you.
All right, well, we're glad to hear it. Okay, Councillor Flaherty, and then it'll be Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair, obviously, and thanks to the A team here, Kate, Kara, and Karen, for the work that you guys do. You know, when I started on the council, like arts and tourism was sort of like one small little line item. And I really have to give credit to my former colleague, City Councilor John Tobin, who obviously he had space obviously in the creative economy with comedy, and he really highlighted the great work that our arts programs and community has in the city, and how they're an integral part of our economy. And so with that, just want to let folks know that yesterday the City Council passed, we got some funds from the coronavirus aid, relief, and economic securities. It's the CARES Act. So we released $45,590 yesterday. That grant was awarded to the National Endowment for the Arts and is to be administered obviously by the Office of Arts and Culture. So that grant, as you know, will help fund some awards to help sustain our arts community and hopefully save jobs in the arts organizations. And so we went from obviously having sort of a focus on the Fort Point Channel area, and now as a citywide city council, we've got artist communities throughout our city, and I've been a strong supporter obviously of the arts, as well as you know, our tall ships, our tournaments, the regatta and the Charles that was mentioned by our colleague, Councilor Braden, the marathon, all those sort of world-class events that we host here in the city that bring, you know, tens of thousands of people or more to our city, which is great. You know, in addition to having the best colleges, universities, and hospital network in the world, we can really boast strong arts, tourism, and culture, and that's because of the work that you guys are doing. So no real specific questions other than just wanted to thank you for your commitment to our city, and hopefully we can continue to support those programs. We do have a council that is obviously focused and wants to partner with you, so take full advantage of that. And obviously, as additional funds come in from the CARES Act, I'll be working closely with Chairwoman Bach, Council President Pro Tem had just created a new committee that he has assigned me as the chair. I'll be working with all my colleagues, and so we're going to do our best to make sure that we're getting funds out to the folks that have been hardest hit. And I have to think that you guys have taken it on the chin. So with that, just keep up the great work, and look forward to working with you moving forward. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Edwards? All right, let me just, Councillor Edwards, you there?
Yes, sorry.
No worries. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I'll just put out the questions. I think my questions have a lot to do with equity and healing through the arts. And some of them are specific to my district. So dealing with I know that the whole replacement of the Christopher Columbus statue is with the arts. I think you guys are commissioning a public discourse around that. I think there's been some concerns about how public it's been and how inclusive for my district to specifically help to guide what the end result will be. And I'm curious, honestly, where we are in that conversation. The other part is the what's in a name. And there's been a lot of questions about what names we choose and whether we're going to change names. And that, I guess, maybe goes to tourism and arts, and how, you could go to Faneuil Hall, but we can also go to Maverick in East Boston. There's so many different people who have, through a different historical lens, have demonstrated to fall short of, obviously, today's standards of equity and racial justice. And so I would like to know more about your process for, honestly, healing through the arts when those controversies come up, and where we are when it comes to Christopher Columbus Park.
So we can speak to the Christopher Columbus statue first. We are committed to commissioning something new for that space. We are, I think, still, and Karen, you might have to help me out here, but we're still in the works of trying to formally gift the statue or loan the statue to the Knights of Columbus, who have said that they will take that, incorporate that into their building project. And so I think we're still trying to formalize that. And once that's done, we can move on to the question of what to commission. And I think that is where a lot of the questions that you're raising around healing and what that conversation looks like, that's where we'd really like to lean into that. We'll definitely be needing a lot of community input from your district, and we'll be looking for guidance from the community that's there. And I think one thing that's come up in that Christopher Columbus process in particular are a lot of the stories and almost kind of oral history of why different things are important to different people and what different cultural symbols mean. And there's a lot of potential for us to really, to lean into that. It's been interesting with the Emancipation Group Memorial, which I think we felt like was a really good public process with a lot of input and people really listening to each other. I think the lesson from that was that we can come up with a process for reviewing not just public art, but other symbols or names and other things. But we want to make sure that when we're doing that, it's not just about something being good or bad or saying yes or no, but more about elevating conversation and connection and histories and having conversations about what do we feel like does represent us and why. And that can also lead to not just changing something, but to more interpretation, like more information about why things are the way they are, so that you actually have something to help you understand what you're seeing when you're in public space. The other thing that we've been thinking about is commissioning temporary art in response to things. So not everything is just static in public space. We can also have public dialogue through artists responding to something like a Columbus Memorial or an Emancipation Group Memorial. So that's some of what we've been thinking about, and would love to have a sketch of a process that we can then apply to other pieces of public art as well. And Karen, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I'll just add that we had 2 public meetings where the Christopher Columbus statue was discussed. The subject matter, much like your question, Counselor, was broader. People were really interested in naming in the parks in itself, but we really tried to focus on the statue itself and really also think about it as an artwork and think about like the damage that had been done to it and what is the best way to care for it. And so we worked with conservators to do that assessment and shared those as well. We had public meetings in August and October with, I think, around or over 100 people in attendance at each, and people gave testimony there. But we do understand that people have different, want different outcomes and have different thoughts about this. So our goal, as Chief Elliott Ortega said, similar to how we approach Emancipation Group, is to have dialogue and listening even when we don't agree with each other.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm clear, because there's no controversy and there's no issue, honestly, with the statute just moving. Well, I wouldn't say there's no controversy, but I would say that process is done. It's going to the Knights of Columbus on private property. And so I don't want that to be what's in the way of or what's holding up the much needed conversation. So the 2 are separate to me. I mean, the actual physical statute and it having a place to be publicly on private property, the Knights of Columbus have accepted that, and so on and whatever. In terms of what, I'll just be direct, when is the next meeting to discuss what is going to happen on that platform in the North End at Christopher Columbus Park?
Counselor, I want to clarify first that we had sent an agreement to the Knights of Columbus and they sent it back with red lines. So we're actually redlined, and so that's what's legal right now. So I wanted to clarify that process is not completely finalized, since we have to be responsive to their requests.
Okay.
And we don't have the subject on a public meeting coming up at this time.
You do not?
No.
When will you?
As Cara said, we are hoping to conclude the process about the actual object itself, the statue itself, and secure its place with the Knights of Columbus and help them plan for that, and also transfer the physical object to storage for them. And then we would look to next steps at opening the conversation about a new artwork.
I'll just say I feel that I'm sure your staff is a lot, but I think the 2 conversations can happen at the same time, especially if it's a legal back and forth on a red line document, and then there's community healing at play right now. And so I would really want you to prioritize, it's conversation. So in as much as there's nothing really stopping that, except what I'm hearing is you just, to be direct, you're just not wanting to get involved right now because of an outside legal negotiation.
I think actually it's more of a capacity question than anything else. One of the investments for FY22 is another project manager for public art. So when we went through all of those projects and the 20 some that are in the works, we have one person who's really able to move all of that forward. And this isn't just a public art project manager question. What you're raising, it's more of a community engagement and conversation, like you're saying. But I think that's the only barrier, honestly, from my end. But happy to talk about when we need to do that and how to prioritize it.
I think as we're coming into recovery and healing as a city, it should be a priority for this summer. And it should be not only a priority, but a sentence that begins and ends this summer as to where we're going on this particular platform and this particular issue. We're going to have the feasts come back. We're going to have it come back. And I say this because I'm expecting it to come to me. The questions, the concerns, the why isn't this and why haven't we moved? And it wouldn't be satisfactory for me to say because we have legal negotiations. If it's a matter of capacity, then that's different. You just need additional people to be part of that. Would it make sense then for my office to help with that conversation and just have that conversation and invite you to come along?
Yeah, potentially. I think I would love to follow up with you and talk through a little bit about what the goals would be from your end, what we need in order to move forward with whatever the next thing is on our end. So, but yes, it would be great to do that in collaboration. So would love to chat.
Yeah, and I'll just put it out there. I think one of the best things that we could do is to celebrate from that community's perspective, the Italian heritage and history. And I think that that is what many of them have said they feel is lost from the statute, or the way the way the statute went away. So I would say that that's a definite concern. And I think that's something that we can all celebrate, regardless of where we're from, is the contributions of Italian immigrants, especially in what is left of as our Italian little Italy. So I think that I'd love for that to be part of how we celebrate a beautiful thing, instead of maybe focusing on individuals, which may have been the mistake to begin with, but focusing just on one person in history. So I look forward to following up about that conversation and possibly just having a public discourse this summer.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Edwards. Now it's mine. And colleagues, I'll just say, if you have a follow-up question, you should text me, because otherwise I'll assume that you don't. Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit more detail about the new investments in both of your departments. When we originally scheduled you for these, you're comparatively small departments, and you're here mainly because of these revolving funds you've got. And I imagine that for Kate, that's especially funny, because it's a revolving fund that has done no business this year and will do no business in the year coming. But it worked out well for the council, because of course, both of your departments are getting proportionately quite substantial investments. And so for Cara, I guess I want to ask about this $1 million for the program to train artists and connect them with city departments or local nonprofits. What's that? Give me more detail. Like, what's that going to look like? I mean, I think, we're all excited about, there's a sort of WPA resonance there, kind of like, arts are part of recovery and stimulus. And that's great as a kind of resonant theme. I'm sort of interested in practice. How are we choosing these folks? How are we publicizing it? Are they being paid for, like, what are we paying them to do? Is it a commissioning process, or, do we think that there's stuff that's left over after the fact? There's a co-op in my district in Fenway that actually has WPA murals inside the building still, which is pretty cool. But, is it something where something's left behind, or is it more kind of performative, activities with people? Just like, what's the vision there? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I think, so we're still designing this. So everything I'm saying is a little bit speculative, but there's definitely a portion of this funding that will supplement our transformative public art grants, which also focus on funding artists and their projects that deal with similar themes. So, we were mentioning the ability to connect with our communities, to process, in some cases, grief, but also joy and what it means to come back into public space. So there'll be some funding that is going towards artists to do some of those projects, artistic projects. There will be some direct commissioning, where we are thinking more along the traditional WPA mural idea of how we can actually, we did outreach to city departments that have city-owned walls that could host a mural and sort of be pre-approved for that. So that's something that we'll be trying to do. And then the piece about hiring artists as a part of city work, some of those might be things that look like artistic products like murals out in the world, but some of it might also just be hiring artists as a part of process. So what does it look like to have an artist on your planning team for an initiative? What does it look like to have an artist who's helping you think about community engagement as a part of a project, city project? And we're in conversation right now with something called Art Train, which is being designed specifically for this moment and for taking advantage of recovery dollars. And it provides an actual training curriculum, both for the artists, and then one that's specifically trained for city governments or public agencies, and also provides technical assistance. So the idea would be that we would do outreach to our city departments here and say, we're going to have this opportunity available, but we need you to go through this training first. People would go through the training, and then we would fund the projects that come out of that. And help departments scope what that looks like. So it's still very exploratory. We would be paying for the artists to be a part of that, as well as helping city staff understand what that might look like for them. And in some cases, it might be something really direct, like public art, or it might be something that, like I said, is really about having someone as a thought partner on your team who can then do different kinds of creative work or creative engagement. And I think we're really hoping for a good mix of those things because we love murals, but we also really want, the city to, across all these different areas, understand the value of creative workers and the arts as a part of what they do.
But in that world, the artist, I mean, is this a ramp that we imagine leading to the artists being employed as city employees? Or is it just like, a contract to like come in and kind of hang out with us on a project?
These are mostly contracts, I think, at least now. Mm-hmm. But I think part of why we're thinking about it this way is to think about where does it go? Is it just about artists having a lot of contracts with city government? Or, we also have the Artisan Residence Program where we're really working with artists as kind of employees throughout the year. And so I think this is just a first step. And it's also an opportunity to be responsive to what's really exciting, which is a lot of city departments that have demand for artists. So we're hearing a lot from different staff who are saying, hey, we really want to work with somebody. What can that look like? But we want to help people understand, all the different ways that they could work with somebody, possibly including having them as a full-time employee on their team.
And is art trained, is it building the bicycle as it rides it, or has it done this before somewhere?
It's building a little bit as it rides it. I think it's leveraging national partners who have all been doing something like this kind of work. One of the main people who's working on it actually advises cities around the country and different public agencies on how to do artisan residence programs. So it's building on a lot of expertise, but it's kind of been, birthed in the moment.
Got it. And I guess it would be interesting to understand. I mean, I know you're, as you say, like still figuring this out. It would be interesting as you get more definition, maybe for you to like send us a bit of an update about because $1 million can be, $1 million that's like 100,000 grants versus 110,000 grants. It's a very different kind of program. So sort of curious about how you're imagining it segmenting, if you have an idea now, or.
We can follow up, I think, once we have a little more detail. I mean, the other piece of this is that if we do want to do direct commissions like murals as a part of the work, then, that eats up a lot of that budget. So I think we're trying to balance those different pieces right now, and figure out what is the highest and best use, but also what's going to be strategic in order to set up more sustainable sources of support for artists and for the arts going forward. So we've done relief funding. We'll keep supporting relief funding as much as we can, knowing that relief funding is also a drop in the bucket for how much money has been lost. How do we set up new areas of growth? So we're trying to hold a few things in the balance right now.
I see. Right. So if there was a world in which the kinds of standard community engagement processes that we and other levels of government engage in, and that private entities engage in when they're doing development or other things, like if there was a world in which we made it more normal for people to hire artists to help them with that, that could be like a real revenue line for our artists, like keep them sort of in the city and able to pay their bills. Is that kind of part of
the idea? Yeah. The idea is if we can get people kind of used to doing these projects, help them do a couple of them, develop their own capacity to do them as well, then, maybe we're looking at a future where every department has a line item for hiring artists as a part of their work.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's definitely the direction. I think one of the things that we, and, Councillor Flaherty, I think had to hop off, but as you mentioned, he's chairing this committee for the council. It's going to keep kind of looking at the ARP funding once we get past budget season, July 1. But, the ARP funding, it's exciting, but it's also tricky, right? Because it's not a sort of sustainable city source that will last forever. And so I think it's exactly like we need to be thinking about it as like what's something where if you have some money up front, you can figure out how to do something impactful, right? That can then have a long tail. So I mean, I think this is pretty interesting. I think though that means that you really want to, as you do work on design, keep focused on that aspect of it, right? Like, so that it's something like how can we do this and then it has some impact in a couple of years and not just in this year.
Right.
Okay. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And the AIR project manager who's coming on board, can you tell me a little bit more about AIR?
Yeah, Karen, do you want to give a little more detail?
Sure. The Artisan Residence Program we just finished our 4th year of the program. So it has changed year to year. It's very responsive to what's going on socially. But the basic idea is that we invite a group of artists to come in and partner with city departments and to come together in a cohort together. So they have sort of a peer group during this period of time, but really to think, creatively and to examine city policies and processes and to take a critical but, creative approach to thinking about how the city can work better. So for example, we had artists working with the Health Commission this year. We've had them work with the Transportation Department, Age Strong, Women's Advancement. We've had a sort of broad range D&D. So artists come in and really co-design projects over the course of that year. And so we had at different periods of time paying through the program support for coordination and management. And we were able to bring someone in full time. I mentioned Sharon Amaguni, and she has been full time this year, but we were able to we're moving her to the budget, the city budget itself this year for FY22.
Got it. Great. And then this is a question I have, and I know that Councillor Braden has it also. So I'm going to ask it, and then Councillor Braden, if you have any further follow up on it. So the piece that was kind of library related in your guys' budget, there's a sort of thing about archiving. Can you speak to that? We were just, because we know we're going to have BPL in front of us later. So I think we were all slightly confused about sort of like how that interacts with them.
Yeah, I mean, Karen can add more detail, but both BPL and the Arts Office have kind of jurisdiction over different collections. So when we're talking about investments in the public art collections database and things that go with that, it's because we are directly tied to the Art Commission and like legal ownership of art objects. So it's we do have conversations and have been having conversations with BPL and their archive and collections folks as we've been getting a database up and running, because obviously we deal with really similar issues, but we're also tracking different kinds of objects and that are tied to different like ordinances. In the case of the Boston Art Commission, which goes back to 18 something. I don't know. Yeah.
Got it.
Does that help clarify a little bit?
Your like library department is its own thing about this collection. Or you don't have it?
The libraries have their own collections, objects, and management process and staff for those objects.
Yeah, sorry. I think there's something in the budget book that's confusing on this front, because I got a few questions both from my staff and others. So I'll figure out what it is. Okay, Kate. But I might come back to art, sorry. But Kate, you're so first of all, I want to say, I mean, I know that you said this, but like I represent a district with a huge number of the places that have been incredibly hard hit from an economic perspective in this period, right? Like, so I'm the counselor for both the Garden and Fenway Park. For the whole ecosystem that thrives off of Heinz Convention Center, which was a worry for a different reason before the pandemic. And I do want to say, because I know it came up earlier, that we all know that Bostonians from all over the city work in these hubs. And so I think the role of tourism to funding all the things we care about. We see excises are down substantially. I think about, the real diverse workers who have strong middle-class jobs through hotel working jobs across the city. I mean, I think it's going to be really important in the recovery for us not to get an idea that our economic hubs, and them doing well, is not part of the whole city thriving, because it completely is. And it's critical. And I'm deeply concerned about it. So I guess what I wanted to ask you about, is if similarly you could kind of speak to this additional new investment that you're getting in a little more detail.
Sure.
And in particular, sorry, I'm looking for my question. So I guess one question I have is like, I think it's described at least someplace in our book as sort of $1 million investment in job training for hard hit industries. I guess
that $1 million for job training is going to economic development.
That's going over to OED.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although we are working together on all of that because a lot of the job training hard hit industries are hotels and hospitality. So we have had a lot of conversations with Trin and Midori about how we can make sure to combine our efforts. In our budget, we got $1 million to extend the tourism campaign, the all-inclusive.
That's right.
So if you want me to break down how we are thinking about spending that, I'm more than happy to.
Well, just if you could speak to, I mean, I think people are excited about it. I think that, okay, I guess the question I would ask is like, how are we measuring? Because it's like, it's good that we're extending it. You know, it's always a little bit hard to know, like, I mean, we all hope and expect that people coming back to Boston is going to tick up now because of the overall public health situation. So it's a little bit hard to measure impact of a tourism campaign.
Well, one of the lines in our proposed budget for that additional funds is for search engine marketing. So we actually will go in there and do the research and see like if hits are up and how people are engaging with the campaign. Some of it is going towards doing like community engagement sessions to get more people involved, like directly with the community. A lot of it is creating more creative. And when we say doing more creative, it's that Proverbs did such a good job of. They hired all of these local artists and photographers and videographers, and we had our poet laureate narrating it. And we really worked to get as many WMBEs involved in this program. And so we will continue with that. Most of the money, I will say, is going to go to ad buys, you know, to get the word out. And we were very strategic and where we placed those ads. We really wanted to engage with local media. That was really, really important to us. And then it's basically sort of a drive market because we're not telling people to get on a plane and come to Boston because the public health isn't we're not there yet. But come for the afternoon, come for the day, a big part of the campaign is just go outside your own neighborhood, so come to East Boston where I live and go to Tawakal, which was a big featured in the campaign, and just sort of trying to get people outside of their comfort zone and discover these like new treasures that a lot of people don't know about. So we're going to focus on that. And so far we've had really, really good responses, and we're excited to be able to create more creative and engage different neighborhoods.
Great. No, it's good to know we're doing SEO tracking and such. And I mean, I do think that within the term of this fiscal year, we will be at the stage of saying, get on a plane and come to Boston. So I hope we're sort of in a position to pivot to that. I just want to check if Councillor Braden had anything, because I know she's got to go in a couple of minutes. I have one or two more questions, but Councillor Braden.
Thank you. I'm still not clear about the library department issue. It's just a line item. There's no breakdown of what that 45 million, 42 million? It seems like a lot of money. And to get some understanding of, am I right?
Councillor Braden, that might just be not under their department. That sounds like the library's budget.
But I checked, it doesn't correspond in monies with the library numbers. So
if maybe if you have somebody from your staff send it my way, we can cross check, and then if we have a follow up, we can send it to Arts.
Very good. That's fine.
Great.
It's just I'm so I wasn't expecting to see a library item in this bucket, so that's why I'm a little confused. But that's all right. Thank you. I will follow up with you.
We can follow up. Yeah, we definitely don't have $45 million. So that's
I was thinking,
David Leonard question.
I know you had an increase in funding, but maybe not that much.
Oh, I think it's as simple as sorry, I'm just in the budget book now trying to
This is operating funds for the library.
No, what it is, it's just that the budget book puts arts and culture as like a section, and then it has arts and culture and then library. So
it's our cabinet.
So it's like your cabinet, exactly. So but it appears as though library is a program of arts and culture, but it is not. I mean, in maybe some sense it is, but not of this department.
So we'll have a breakdown of it in the library discussion.
Right,
later.
exactly. Yes, precisely.
Very good. I think I'm clear right now.
All right,
For the
great.
moment.
Excellent.
Thank you for your
Okay.
thank you for your indulgence.
I
Thank
think
you.
that was the same confusion, yeah, and driving the question I was asking earlier. Let me just come back to, I'm coming back to just one or two more questions. So a thing that you both know, I think, is that I care quite a lot about chronicling the city's history and about, like, you know, how we can use that to you know, drive tourism, how we can do arts work that kind of like connects back with our history. I think actually we have a very strong historic sensibility in Boston, but I'm very interested in expanding that past a kind of like, so what's sometimes been a sort of narrow revolutionary history kind of story. So I'd love to hear a little bit, Cara, about what you guys are doing on that front. And then Kate, I know we've talked about, you know, I would like us to really, and I'll be saying more on this front soon again. Been a little distracted by setting up the budget stuff, but you know, really have us pull together in a cross-departmental way, in a way that really lets us take full advantage of the 250th as a tourism opportunity and the 400th. But as a tourism opportunity, as a BPS educational opportunity, as a commemoration, public art, public performance, and as like Bostonians sort of seeing themselves reflected in the history. I just think I live surrounded by the Black history of Beacon Hill, and very few people kind of know about it still. And so think a lot about how we kind of shift things on that front. So I would love to hear a little bit from both of you just about kind of any latest work on either of those fronts.
Do you want to go, Kate?
Well, I'll start. We have a weekly meeting with the Rev 250 people. So the Sester Centennial, and I know that you're very involved with creating commission. Unfortunately, they didn't get their state commission, but they know that they're sure they're going to get it in the next round. So we've been working slowly towards that. They have, you know, I mean, you know that community too. They have all sorts of great ideas. And I look forward to working with all of the stakeholders to really show off our city in 2026 and take advantage of the opportunity to make it, you know, sort of the same way the all-inclusive campaign, and highlight areas of the city that have all sorts of historic revolutionary significance that a lot of people don't know about. And working with arts and culture and landmarks and all sorts of other departments to really work with placemaking so people know about that. So like I said, we have these weekly meetings. They're in the process of creating their own nonprofit so they can start fundraising for the event. So it's a multi-year program, and we are engaged fully in supporting them every step of the way.
Great, Cara.
Yeah, our main entry point for thinking about some of this has been through public art this year. We hit a little bit of a bump in the road of being able to implement this, mostly due to capacity and being responsive to everything else that was going on. But we have pulled together a sketch of programs to really delve into the history and challenging questions around different pieces of public art in Boston. And a lot of that does have to do with pre-colonial history and Indigenous representation in our city narrative broadly, I guess I could say. So that's an area that we would love to explore and get into more, and think about how we can work to broaden that part of our story, and also work with cultural workers, Indigenous cultural workers, to help do that. That's one thing that would definitely be on our priority list. And in terms of telling more diverse histories of the things that we already do talk a lot about, like revolutionary history, I think any way that we can help be a part of that conversation, we're really excited to do so. It's been so much at the heart of a lot of the public conversations, the public art conversations that have been happening this year.
Great. Yeah, and I would also love to be supportive of, you know, the North American Indian Center of Boston is actually at the edge of my district. And a thing that, you know, and we've been grateful to partner with them on a bunch of different fronts over the past year and a half. And A thing that I feel like we definitely see is that because Native Americans represent a relatively small demographic proportion of Boston, that they're not always in the conversation, and that I mean, you know, I don't think that they receive any kind of city funding support for any of like activity, you know, and I think it's sort of, we have a lot of reckoning to do with that past, and a piece of that is we can't be missing that narrative and those stories and their involvement because they're a small proportion of the population on this land, that they were the earliest occupants of, you know. So yeah, we would love to be involved, and I hopefully you're already in touch with NICOB, but
yeah, we actually funded them through that relief funding this year
great.
for BIPOC organizations. So, but that's just relief funding. You know, there's still a lot of relationship building, I think, to do there. But yeah, we would love to be a part of that conversation. And I think also I would just put in a plug for training city staff, because a lot of this is also that we have to know our own history and what some of those questions are, in order to really be fluent in how we do that work, and to know, right, like who the organizations and the people are who need to be at the table. That's part of, we've been having some interdepartmental conversations about some of these questions, and that's definitely come up as well.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And I do think I'd be interested in whether there's an opportunity also to, for you guys to partner with, this is more my gripe for May 10th with landmarks and environment, but I feel like we have the city archaeology department that does amazing work, and Joe is fantastic. But there's so much of it is just continually like going to sites and archiving things and making some notes and then like setting it on the shelf. And he's just published a book, which is great, like kind of public history. But I think a lot about like, is there a way to connect up the work that the city archaeologist does that connects with these native histories, with these earliest communities, and then find a way to actually tell that story in art and make it like accessible to people? Because we have too deep a back catalog and not enough of a front catalog, like for people to kind of interact with on some of what we've been investing in on the history front.
And Joe's been a part of those interdepartmental conversations too. So I almost wonder if the two commemorative events that you're talking about coming up could be a good thing for that group to also work toward, because right now it's been just kind of informal information sharing and seeing like where we could be supportive of each other. But that could be a good way to orient us towards something more actionable. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, well, we will work on that. And then I guess just pivoting back to you, Kate, and I am mindful of time. We're going to let you guys go in a minute. And I don't think I have any public testimony, but this is my flag to central staff that if I do, please let me know. So, I mean, I'll ask OED about the $1 million for the hard hit industries, but I guess I'd ask you more conceptually, like what do you think would really make a difference in terms of accelerating our recovery in the kind of tourism and tourism, sports, entertainment space? I'm just so mindful, again, because I've just seen it. Like I've had these, it's not just that I have the garden and the ballpark, it's that I have this whole economy around them that have just like cratered over the last year. And so, you know, I think there's a broader city conversation about the ARP funding. There's going to be lots of stakeholders in the mix. Like, you know, some of that can be used for like direct economic assistance. And I guess I just wonder, since I have you here, from sort of where you sit, what feels like the kind of impact space. And one of the things I think a lot about in these types of moments is sometimes it's about catching people in the moment of decision. And what I mean by that is like, if you're a shop owner who's just like under an incredible amount of stress and you're looking at the debt you've built up in the pandemic and you're sort of in this moment of like, am I going to give it a go or am I not? Like the city can't fill the whole economic hole, right? And make you whole, but the city might be able to do things that make you feel encouraged to say, I think I'm going to try. right? Or I think I am going to hire back my workers and or like, and so I think a lot about like, that's where we probably get our most bang for the buck, because we're not the feds or the state in terms of scale, but like, can we affect that decision and sort of people's feeling of the climate and where we're going? And it's the same thing for getting people to, like, if somebody hires their first worker out of a diverse pipeline, their first returning citizen, their first youth, like once they do that, then they hire another one, right? There's so many things that are like super contingent on these like moments of decision. So I'm just kind of curious where you think we should be going on this front.
Well, sadly, the number one barrier that is making everything so difficult is something we have absolutely zero control over. Because until the city is open, it's really hard to correct all of these things, and we can't do anything to make the numbers go down faster and make businesses open quickly. I mean, that's the biggest gripe we get is with having to limit numbers and those kinds of things, and those are all public health initiatives. I would say giving us the funds to expand and continue this tourism campaign is a really good first step. We've never done it. I've been here for 11 years. We've never done a tourism campaign before. So being able to reach out to these neighborhoods and small businesses that we've never, and saying like, we're going to try to get people to come here. It's all very new and has been received very well. And it's really exciting for us as a department to be able to do all this sort of these new things. Just with the announcement on Monday of being able to open things up and the mayor's encouragement of sort of these small sort of safe festivals, that's going to allow us to hire, we have a lot of, some of our staff is just temporary workers that come in and our crew that we haven't been able to work because we haven't had any events. And we sat and had a meeting about how we're going to try to make this an opportunity for somebody to have their, maybe first job with the city. And we reached out to BPS to see if we could reach out to their alumni to get kind of a diverse mix and have it's kind of a chance for us because we've put everything on hold to do everything new and not just repeat the way we did things before. And Cara and I just had a meeting last week of how we're going to program City Hall Plaza and how we can maybe create some sort of easy access for artists and musicians that want to do things in spaces where, space is hard to find in the city. So we have all these new ideas and we're just so excited to have people back and help people through the process. We've streamlined a lot of access to, so if you want a public event application, then then we've streamlined all of that and made a lot of things a lot easier. And we're just moving forward with making things easier and opening up to as many people as possible.
Great. Yeah, no, and obviously, I mean, I recognize we just shifted into the new reality where we have a timeline.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, how do we, now we have to get ahead of that timeline in the sense of like, we don't want it to be that like we're reopening and then we haven't, I'm just so afraid, like, I'm so excited that we're opening up, like, and that, as you say, we're actually moving into a public health world in which that's the responsible thing to do, right? Like, that's what's so thrilling. That said, I think what's scary is the like trepidation about what's the point at which we all realize that like a business that we thought was hibernating is not coming back. Right. And kind of like a little bit of the like wreckage that you only see after the storm dynamic. And so I'm just exercised about like, is there
I think that's why it's been so important and that we've joined forces with a lot of different departments that maybe we wouldn't have communicated with so much before in the past, but working really closely with small business so that when I hear about a restaurant that's not making it, I can call small business and they can offer their support. Or if I know somebody's having an issue with their licensing, I can call consumer affairs and then we can all work on it together. So it's like we're this team of people just trying to help. And I think that, and we have these, these public information sessions every week so people can ask questions. I think the more we can do that, the more sort of transparent our help is, the more we can tell people how we can help them, I think is the better. Because I think That was something that a lot of people maybe didn't know about before. And a lot of the programs didn't exist before. So, you know, even things like a Be Local campaign, I had you know, like the Green Fest and the local food festival. I had a meeting with them yesterday, and we're trying to think of ways like, how are we to get people, all of the community, to find out about this? And you know, and then I called small business who's doing the Be Local, and I said, can we advertise these events on your app? And, you know, just trying to coordinate efforts to make sure people know what's going on in every neighborhood in the city, I think will go a long way.
Kate and I have been having a lot of conversations about this too. And I think, you know, there is going to be a need still for direct relief funding for performing arts venues and presenters. I think that's just going to be a reality, because this is also just like a communications question and consumer confidence question, which OED is doing a lot of work on. We're participating in a couple different studies to see, you know, even just because you're going to be at 100% capacity by September doesn't mean that people are going to show up and pack that space. So you know, earned revenue is still going to be a really big question. We don't really know how people are going to behave yet, but I think the more that we all cooperate on one message about what that looks like to come back, the more people will have confidence to do so. But there's still going to be just regular capital costs, business costs required to reopen, right? Some places are going from having 2 staff to needing 60 staff in order to have a season. So I think just the more we know the details of that, the more we can at least make smart relief investments in those businesses.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, Cara. Yeah, I think people are gonna roar back. As somebody who personally went and just subscribed to the full season of a theater's like, I mean, you know, I just feel like we've all been missing it, and but I agree with you that people are gonna need. There's gonna be real smoothing needs, and there's sometimes people just they can't make the leap across the gap without more support from all of us. So would love to, you know, work with you and get more thoughts on that, especially in relation to the ARP funds. Just two quick last things. One is just to Kate, I would be remiss not to say, as the counselor for Mission Hill, that we were disappointed not to be in the all-inclusive Boston thing. It was one of the neighborhoods that was sort of left out in the original map, which obviously caused some considerable controversy. It was looped into Fenway Kenmore, but then not a focus, not something with any visuals, not, you know, and I think like Mission Hill is very proudly its own neighborhood. It's also like in this category of neighborhoods we're sharing and highlighting, like I think very much, you know, has a great, really robust Main Streets district, lot of great locally owned restaurants. And
I will say that will be corrected. And we only started with 6 neighborhoods. So we had to start with 6. So people had to get left out, but we'll make
fair
sure
enough.
that's corrected.
just saying, Mission Hill, we don't want, it doesn't want to be subsumed into anyone else. Yeah. And then Cara, I do think you mentioned the Opportunity Fund. I do think because the governor just made these announcements, there's going to be a bunch of people trying, like, I've already heard it from some of my neighborhoods. People are like, oh, well, I know everything's canceled for the summer, but like, could we pull something together? Because like, I think people are antsy to see each other and be out and about, and folks are getting vaccinated. So if people are trying to pull together, you know, something for this summer, let's say, you know, I think you referenced, Kate, the sort of safe, small size, you know, street festival type things. Like as a counselor, asking on behalf of myself and other counselors, like who are the right point people within your respective departments to kind of go to on a, like, is this doable? Is it within the guidelines, et cetera?
I can answer that, Cara, if you want. I would say, I would tell them to fill out a special event application, because the calendar is getting, so many people pushed all their stuff to the fall that that those things are getting busy. But now that they have an idea of what you know, what they can do in like, you know, next week or the week after, then they'll walk you through and look at a calendar, and then they meet with BPS and transportation and all of those people to see what's available when and where. So I would say fill out a public event application first, and the Mayor's Office of Consumer Affairs and Licensing can walk them through the process, or they can contact me and I can help them through it.
Great, awesome, thank you. And Cara, the Opportunity Fund, if someone wanted to do something with arts in July, August, is that still like, is that on a?
Yeah, we have a deadline coming up, I think in the beginning of June. And yeah, June 4th. And we'll have an info session or a Q&A available on that. And Julia Ryan is the point person in our office. I think what we should do, NIDA, is follow up with Christina on our team and just make sure that the council has the advertising, like marketing stuff that we've been putting together for that deadline in particular, because that's probably the most useful for somebody planning for the summer. So we'll get that to you.
And what's the scale of those grants? Because I know they're small.
They're up to $2,000.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all so much for being with us and for staying through a fairly long hearing. We really appreciate all of your work on our behalf. And I think, I think that on both fronts, there's some exciting new investments to help us deal with, of course, a really hard year. So just want to thank you also for, you made reference to it in a very positive way, Kate, the fact that you and everybody have been all hands on deck, working together as a collaborative team. But you've also been all hands on deck, I think, in both departments all year in a way that none of us expected, 14 months ago. So just want to give lots of credit on that front. And with that, I think I don't see any public testimony. So I think that this hearing of the Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.